The words left Maya's mouth before she could stop them. She couldn't accept his money because she was already his wife, and Alexander Sterling, the man who had abandoned her 6 months ago, crumpled to the floor. Now the secret marriage he'd tried to bury was about to tear apart everything he'd spent his life building. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment where in the world you're watching from. Let's go. Some secrets are kept in vaults. Others are kept in plain sight, hidden behind shy smiles and downcast eyes. For Maya Chun, a 26-year-old waitress at the exclusive Belmont Heights restaurant, her secret was both her armor and her prison. She had learned to move through the world like a ghost, unnoticed and unremarkable, serving champagne to people who never looked at her face. But tonight, in the amber glow of crystal chandeliers and beneath the weight of 1,000 unspoken truths, her carefully constructed invisibility was about to shatter. Tonight, the man who had promised her everything and given her nothing was sitting at table 7, and he had no idea who she was. The Belmont Heights restaurant occupied the 65th floor of the Sterling Tower, suspended in the clouds above the city like a jewel box. Maya had worked there for 3 months, ever since she'd returned from Singapore with a marriage certificate in her suitcase and a hollow ache in her chest. The restaurant was a temple to excess, where a single meal could cost more than most people made in a month. The clientele were titans of industry, old money aristocrats, and the kind of people who measured their worth in influence rather than dollars. Maya had learned their preferences quickly. The senator who always ordered his steak rare, the tech mogul who drank only French Burgundy, and the real estate heiress who never ate but always ordered elaborately just to send it back. They were predictable in their extravagance. None of them ever looked at the waitstaff long enough to remember their faces. Maya preferred it that way. She had perfected the art of moving through the dining room with the practiced efficiency of someone who had learned that attention was dangerous. Her uniform, a crisp white shirt beneath a tailored black vest, was impeccable. Her dark hair was always pulled back in a simple bun. She wore no jewelry except for a thin gold band on her left hand, which she kept turned inward so the metal pressed against her palm, a secret she carried against her skin. When she spoke to guests, her voice was soft and deferential, never rising above the ambient music that floated through the space. She had learned this art of disappearing long before she came to Belmont Heights. It had been a survival skill in her childhood, growing up as the scholarship student at an elite academy where her classmates arrived in chauffeur-driven cars while she took 3 buses to get to school. It had served her well during her brief, disastrous semester at university before her mother's illness had forced her to drop out and work full-time, and it had become essential 6 months ago when she had made the most impulsive, reckless decision of her life, when she had married Alexander Sterling. The memory of it still felt surreal, like something that had happened to someone else. She had been working as a temporary translator at Sterling Global, the multinational conglomerate that Alexander's family had built over 3 generations. Her Mandarin was flawless, a gift from her mother who had immigrated from Beijing, and the company had needed someone to facilitate negotiations with a Chinese manufacturing partner. The job was supposed to last 2 weeks. She was supposed to be invisible there too, just a voice converting words from one language to another. But Alexander Sterling had noticed her, not at first. At first, he had been exactly what she expected, a 34-year-old CEO with a face that belonged on magazine covers and the kind of cold, analytical intelligence that made him formidable in boardrooms. He moved through the world with the absolute confidence of someone who had never been denied anything. During those first meetings, Maya had watched him dismantle the Chinese negotiators' arguments with surgical precision, speaking through her as if she were simply a piece of equipment. She should have hated him. She should have remained invisible. But then something had shifted. On the 5th day of negotiations, during a break, he had asked her a question in Mandarin. His pronunciation was terrible, the tone's all wrong. But he had asked her what she thought about the deal they were negotiating, not as a translator, but as a person. She had been so startled that she had answered honestly. She told him the Chinese partners were insulted by his aggressive tactics, that in their culture, such directness was seen as disrespectful, and that he was about to lose a deal worth hundreds of millions because he was approaching it like a hostile takeover instead of a partnership. He had stared at her for a long moment, his gray eyes sharp and assessing. Then he had smiled, a real smile that transformed his severe features into something almost boyish, and said, "Show me how to fix it." For the next week, Maya had become more than a translator. She had become his advisor, teaching him the subtle art of negotiation in a culture that valued patience and face-saving over raw aggression. He had listened to her, really listened, and together they had salvaged the deal. On the final night after the contracts were signed, he had taken her to dinner at a small restaurant far from the corporate towers. He had asked about her life, her dreams, her mother's illness, and for the first time in years, Maya had let herself be seen. The next 3 weeks had been a whirlwind. Alexander Sterling, she discovered, was not just a ruthless businessman. He was also fiercely intelligent, unexpectedly thoughtful, and carrying wounds of his own. His father had died 2 years earlier, leaving him to run an empire he had never wanted. His mother was a cold, manipulative woman who treated him like a business asset rather than a son. His younger brother, Cameron, was a charming wastrel who spent money as fast as Alexander could make it. Alexander was trapped in a gilded cage, and Maya, in her quiet way, had offered him something he had never had, someone who saw him him as a person rather than a position. They had fallen into each other with the desperate intensity of two lonely people who had found an unexpected lifeline. When Alexander's mother had insisted he attend a charity gala in Singapore with an appropriate date, a woman from their social circle who could smile for cameras and make small talk with donors, he had asked Maya instead. She should have said no, but she had been falling in love with him, and when you are falling, you do not think about the ground rushing up to meet. In Singapore, everything had unraveled and reformed in a way neither of them had anticipated. Alexander's mother had made her disapproval venomously clear, cornering Maya at the gala and telling her in clipped, aristocratic tones that she was a temporary amusement, a translation error that would be corrected. Maya had fled to the hotel room in tears. Alexander had found her there, rage and something roar in his eyes. He had told her his mother controlled his trust fund until he turned 35 or married with her approval, that she used money as a leash and that he was tired of being treated like a trained dog. Then he had said, "Marry me. Not someday, now tonight, marry me and help me take my life back." It had been reckless and romantic and completely insane. They had found an officiant who performed a legal ceremony at 2 in the morning in a hotel suite overlooking the Marina Bay. Alexander had slipped a simple gold band on her finger, and Maya had become Mrs. Alexander Sterling. For one perfect night, she had believed in fairy tales. The next morning, Alexander's phone had exploded with news of a hostile takeover attempt against Sterling Global. His brother Cameron, with the backing of their mother, was trying to force a board vote to oust Alexander as CEO. Alexander had received a message from his mother: "Come home and end this foolishness or lose everything." He had looked at Maya, and she had seen the calculation in his eyes, the moment when love collided with dynasty. He had promised her he would handle it, that he would tell his family about their marriage and fight for their future. He had kissed her and boarded a private jet back to the city. That had been 6 months ago. Maya had waited in Singapore for 3 days before she realized he was not coming back. There had been no calls, no messages, no explanation. She had flown home with her own money, her marriage certificate, and a shattered heart. She had tried to contact him once, calling his office, but his assistant had told her crisply that Sterling was unavailable and that she should not call again. The message was clear. She had been a mistake, an impulse he regretted, a secret he intended to bury. So Maya had buried herself instead. She had returned to the only life she knew, moving invisibly through a world that had never wanted to see her anyway. The Belmont Heights restaurant had been hiring, and the irony of working in a building owned by Sterling Global, serving people from Alexander's world while remaining unseen, had a certain poetic justice to it. She wore her ring turned inward and told no one about the marriage. It was easier to pretend it had never happened. Easier to pretend her heart was not broken every time she heard his name mentioned on the business news. Easier to pretend she was not, still legally and impossibly, Mrs. Alexander Sterling. She had almost convinced herself she had moved on. Almost. Then tonight, Marcus, the maître d', had appeared in the kitchen with a seating chart and a warning. Table 7 tonight is a big one. Alexander Sterling and guests. Corporate celebration. Make sure service is flawless. Key's the one who signs our paychecks, so smile, be efficient and invisible. Got it. Maya's blood had turned to ice. For a moment, she could not breathe. Alexander, here, after 6 months of silence. He would be 15 feet away from her, and she would have to serve him. She had considered calling in sick, but her pride, that stubborn core of dignity she had clung to her entire life, would not let her run. If he could pretend she did not exist, then she could do the same. She could be invisible. She had been invisible her entire life. She could manage one more night. When the party arrived, Maya had been refilling water glasses at table 12, her back to the entrance. She heard Marcus's obsequious greeting, the low rumble of male voices, and the sharp click of expensive shoes on marble. She forced herself to turn slowly, professionally, her face a mask of polite neutrality. Alexander Sterling stood in the center of the dining room like a king surveying his domain. He was even more devastating than she remembered. His charcoal suit was perfectly tailored, his dark hair slightly longer than corporate standards, but somehow making him look more commanding rather than less. His gray eyes swept the room with the detached assessment of someone calculating value and risk in every glance. Next to him was Cameron Sterling, his younger brother, all easy charm and practiced smiles. And beside Cameron was a woman Maya recognized from society pages. Natasha Volkov, a Russian heiress with ice blonde hair and a dress that cost more than Maya's annual salary. Marcus was seating them at table 7, the best table in the house, positioned by the floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of the glittering city below. Alexander sat with his back to the window, his face to the room, a position of power. Cameron was laughing at something, his hand possessively on Natasha's back, and Alexander was looking at his phone, already bored with the celebration that was supposedly in his honor. Maya's supervisor, Claire, touched her elbow. "Maya, you have table 7 tonight, corporate VIP. Make it perfect." Maya wanted to refuse. She wanted to explain that she could not possibly serve that table. But Claire was already walking away, and Marcus was gesturing for her to approach. Maya picked up 3 menus, her hands steady through sheer force of will, and walked toward the table. Her heart was hammering so hard she was certain they could hear it. As she approached, Cameron looked up first, his smile reflexive and meaningless. Natasha was texting on her phone, and Alexander finally looked up from his screen. His eyes met hers. For one brief, infinite second, Maya saw recognition flare in his gaze. She saw shock, then something that might have been guilt or panic or regret. But then, like a door slamming shut, his expression went blank, cold, dismissive. He looked at her the way he looked at all service staff, with the distant politeness of someone acknowledging a piece of furniture. "Good evening," Maya said, her voice steady and professional, not betraying the screaming chaos inside her. "Welcome to Belmont Heights. My name is Maya, and I'll be your server tonight." She placed the menus down, not meeting anyone's eyes. Alexander said nothing. Cameron nodded absently. Natasha did not look up from her phone. Maya recited the evening specials from memory, her voice calm and detached. She took their drink orders, a bottle of Dom Perignon for the table, whiskey neat for Alexander, a cosmopolitan for Natasha. When she returned with the drinks, Cameron was telling a story about a yacht party in Monaco, and Natasha was laughing in that practiced way that beautiful women laugh at rich men's jokes. Alexander was silent, his jaw tight, his fingers drumming once on the table before he stilled them. Throughout the dinner service, Maya moved through the practiced choreography of fine dining. Courses appeared and disappeared. Wine was poured, tables were cleared. She was a ghost, performing her duties with mechanical precision. Every time she approached table 7, she felt Alexander's gaze on her, heavy and assessing. But when she looked at him, he was always staring at his plate or his phone or the view, never at her. He was pretending she did not exist. He was pretending they had never stood in a hotel suite in Singapore and promised each other forever. The meal was nearing its end when Cameron, pleasantly drunk on champagne, decided to make a toast. "To my brother," he said, raising his glass with a grin that did not reach his eyes, who turned 35 today. "Welcome to the age where you can finally access your trust fund without mother's permission. Freedom at last." Natasha clinked her glass against his. Alexander's expression was unreadable. Something cold twisted in Maya's chest. 35, the age when he would have full access to his inheritance without needing to be married. The age when their marriage, if he had ever acknowledged it, would have been irrelevant. She understood now. He had used her in Singapore as leverage, as a threat to his mother, but he had never needed to follow through. He had simply waited out the clock, and now he was free. Free of his mother's control. Free of Maya. As Maya cleared the dessert plates, her hands trembling just slightly, Cameron suddenly looked up at her with the unfocused intensity of someone who had drunk just enough to lose his social filter. "You know what, sweetheart? You've been fantastic tonight. Really top-tier service." He pulled out his wallet, extracted 10 crisp $100 bills, and dropped them on the table. $1,000. That's for you. You've earned it. The money lay there between them, an obscene display of casual wealth. Maya stared at it, something hot and furious rising in her throat. This was what she was worth to them. $1,000. A tip for good service. She looked at Alexander, really looked at him, and saw that he was frozen, his hand halfway to his water glass. His gray eyes locked on her face with an expression that was finally unmistakably fear. "I can't accept this," Maya said, her voice quiet but steady. Cameron laughed. "Of course you can. Don't be shy. You worked hard. Take it." "I can't," Maya repeated, and now her voice was stronger, clearer. She looked directly at Alexander, and the words that had been locked inside her for 6 months finally broke free. "I can't accept your money, sir, because I can't pretend to be just your waitress." The table went silent. Cameron's smile faltered. Natasha looked up from her phone. Alexander's face had gone white. "I'm already your wife," Maya said, each word clear and final. "I have been for 6 months." For a long moment, no one moved. The words hung in the air, impossible and true. Then Alexander Sterling, the man who controlled billions of dollars and commanded empires, stood up so abruptly his chair scraped loudly against the floor. His face was bloodless, his eyes wide with shock. He opened his mouth as if to speak, but no sound came out. His hand went to his chest, clutching at his shirt. "Alexander?" Cameron's voice was sharp with concern. Alexander took one stumbling step backward, his breathing suddenly rapid and shallow. His eyes never left Maya's face, but they were unfocused now. Panic. "I can't," he gasped, and then his knees buckled. He collapsed, his body crumpling as Cameron lunged to catch him. As Natasha screamed, as chaos erupted in the elegant dining room, Maya stood frozen, the $1,000 still on the table. Her secret finally spoken, and the man who had promised her everything lying unconscious at her feet. The human body, when confronted with impossible truths, has a limited repertoire of responses. It can fight, flee, or simply shut down. Alexander Sterling's body, accustomed to controlling boardrooms and commanding respect, chose the third option. As chaos erupted around Maya, she remained locked in place, watching as Cameron cradled his brother's unconscious form, as Natasha's screaming brought restaurant staff running, as Marcus materialized with a phone pressed to his ear calling for an ambulance. The other diners had gone silent, their elegant conversations suspended as they craned their necks to witness the spectacle. Maya's supervisor Claire was suddenly beside her, gripping her arm with surprising strength. "What did you do?" Claire hissed, her face pale with panic. "What did you say to him?" Maya could not answer. Her voice, which had been so clear moments ago when she spoke the truth that had been suffocating her for 6 months, had deserted her entirely. She watched as 2 waiters helped Cameron ease Alexander onto the floor, as someone brought a folded napkin to place under his head. Alexander's face was slack, his skin waxen, and for one terrible moment Maya thought she had killed him, that her words, the simple truth of their marriage, had been a weapon that stopped his heart. Then she saw his chest rise and fall, shallow but steady, and the relief that flooded through her was so intense it made her dizzy. Cameron looked up, his face twisted with anger, and his eyes found Maya with laser precision. "Hugh," he spat, rising to his feet and advancing on her. "What the hell did you just say? What kind of game are you playing?" Marcus stepped between them, his professional composure cracking. "Sir, please, let's remain calm. The paramedics are on their way. Calm?" Cameron's voice rose, drawing more attention. "This waitress just claimed to be married to my brother and made him collapse. I want her arrested. I want her fired. I want to know who put her up to this insane stunt." Natasha had stopped screaming but was now filming the scene with her phone, her influencer instincts overriding her shock. Maya could see herself in the frame, frozen and pale. The accused. "It's not a stunt," Maya heard herself say, her voice distant as if it belonged to someone else. "It's true. We were married in Singapore 6 months ago. I have the certificate." The words hung in the air and she watched them land like bombs. Cameron's face went from red to purple. "You're insane," he said flatly. "Alexander would never marry someone like you. You're a con artist, a delusional stalker. I'm calling the police." But before he could make good on the threat, Alexander stirred. His eyes fluttered open, unfocused and confused. He tried to sit up, and Cameron immediately crouched beside him. "Easy, Alex. Don't move. You passed out. The ambulance is coming." Alexander's gaze swept the circle of concerned faces. The phone's recording, the restaurant staff hovering anxiously, and then his eyes found Maya. For a heartbeat, she saw everything she needed to see in those gray depths. Recognition, guilt, and fear. He remembered. Of course he remembered. How could he forget? "No ambulance," Alexander said, his voice rough but commanding even in weakness. "I'm fine. Help me up." Cameron and another man helped him to his feet, though he swayed slightly. Marcus was immediately there with a chair, but Alexander waved it away. He straightened his jacket with shaking hands, and Maya noticed he was careful not to look at her directly. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus announced to the dining room with forced cheerfulness, "Mr. Sterling is perfectly well. Please, continue your meals. We apologize for the disruption." The ambient noise slowly resumed, though every eye in the room remained on table 7. Alexander finally, inevitably, turned to Maya. His expression was carefully neutral, a mask she recognized from boardroom negotiations. "Miss Chun," he said, his voice formal and cold, "we need to speak privately. Now." It was not a request. Claire started to object, but Marcus silenced her with a look. Whatever was happening here was beyond their pay grade, beyond restaurant policy. This was Sterling family business, and in a building owned by Sterling Global, Alexander's word was law. "There's a private dining room on this floor," Marcus said quickly. "Room 12. I'll have it opened immediately." Alexander nodded once, then without another word, turned and walked toward the exit with Cameron at his side. Natasha hesitated, clearly torn between following and continuing to film, but Cameron snapped at her to come, and she obeyed, though she kept her phone out. Maya stood frozen until Claire gave her a small push. "Go," she whispered. "And Maya, whatever this is, I hope you know what you're doing." Maya did not know what she was doing. She only knew that 6 months of silence had been broken, and there was no going back now. She followed Alexander's path through the dining room, feeling every eye on her, hearing the whispers starting. By tomorrow, this would be on social media, on gossip sites, maybe even in the news. The shy waitress who claimed to be married to Alexander Sterling. She would be destroyed. Unless she was telling the truth. Room 12 was smaller than the main dining area, but no less It was designed for private business dinners with a single long table, leather chairs, and walls that muted sound. When Maya entered, Alexander was standing by the window, his back to the room, his shoulders rigid. Cameron was pacing like a caged animal, and Natasha was perched on a chair, still filming. "Put the phone away, Natasha," Alexander said without turning. "But Alex, this is..." Alexander's voice dropped to a tone Maya had only heard him use once when firing an executive who had tried to embezzle funds. It was the voice of absolute authority, and it cut like a blade. "Put it away." Natasha's phone disappeared into her purse. Cameron stopped pacing, and Maya closed the door behind her, sealing them all in together. "Everyone out," Alexander said. "Not happening," Cameron shot back. "If this lunatic is trying to blackmail you, I'm staying." "She's not," Alexander started, then stopped. He finally turned from the window, and Maya saw that his face was still pale, his jaw clenched. "Cameron, Natasha, give us 10 minutes, please." The please was what did it. Alexander Sterling did not say please. Cameron's eyes narrowed, suspicion blooming. "You know her," he said slowly. "You actually know her?" Alexander said nothing, which was an answer in itself. Cameron looked between them, his expression cycling through disbelief, anger, and something else. Fear, perhaps. Fear of what this meant. 10 minutes, he finally said. "Then I'm coming back in, and we're calling our lawyers." He grabbed Natasha's arm and pulled her toward the door. Natasha shot Maya a look that was pure venom, the instinctive hatred of one woman who sees another as a threat. Then they were gone, and Maya was alone with her husband for the first time in 6 months. The silence stretched between them, vast and heavy. Alexander moved to the table, gripped the back of a chair as if he needed it for support, and finally looked at her really looked at her. "Maya," he said, and just the sound of her name in his voice made her chest tighten. "I can explain. Can you?" Maya heard the bitterness in her own voice and did not try to hide it. "Can you explain 6 months of silence? Can you explain why you left me in Singapore like I was nothing? Can you explain why you looked at me tonight like you'd never seen me before?" "I didn't know you were working here," Alexander said, which was so far from the point that Maya almost laughed. "I didn't know you were in the city. I thought, what? That I'd just disappear? That I'd pretend it never happened?" Maya took a step toward him, her fear burning away in the heat of her anger. "You married me, Alexander. You put this ring on my finger." She held up her left hand, the gold band catching the light. "You said you loved me. You said we'd face your family together, and then you left me. I had no choice," Alexander said, his voice rough. "When I got back, Cameron and my mother had already moved against me. They had shareholders lined up, board members ready to vote me out. It was a coup. If I had told them about you, about us, my mother would have used it. She would have destroyed you to get to me. So you protected me by abandoning me?" Maya's voice cracked. "By letting me think I meant nothing to you?" "I meant to come back," Alexander said, and now she heard the desperation in his voice. "I meant to explain, to bring you home properly once I had secured my position, but every day that passed made it harder. Every day I didn't call, I convinced myself you were better off without me, that I'd made a mistake dragging you into my family's dysfunction." "That's a coward's logic," Maya said flatly. "You had a choice. You chose your company over me. I chose to keep you safe," Alexander countered, his voice rising. "Do you have any idea what my mother is capable of? She's had people audited, investigated, arrested on trumped-up charges. She destroyed my father's mistress, ruined her entire family just to make it. If I had acknowledged our marriage, she would have come after you with everything she had." "And you thought I couldn't handle it?" Maya asked. "You thought I was too weak, too common to survive in your world. I thought I was protecting you," Alexander repeated, but his voice was weaker now. "The marriage, it was impulsive. We barely knew each other. I thought maybe it was better to let it fade away, to annul it quietly." "Annul it?" Maya felt something cold and hard settle in her chest. "You were planning to erase me? To pretend I never existed?" "Maya," Alexander reached for her, but she stepped back. "Don't touch me," she said. "Don't you dare touch me." Alexander's hand dropped. He looked at her, and for the first time she saw past the CEO mask to the man underneath, and that man looked exhausted. "What do you want?" he asked quietly. "Do you want money? I'll give you whatever you need. Do you want a divorce? I'll have my lawyers draw up papers that are generous. Just tell me what you want and I'll make this right." It was such a perfect encapsulation of who he was. A problem solver. A man who thought everything could be fixed with money and contracts. Maya wanted to scream at him, to tell him that what she wanted was the man who had looked at her in Singapore like she was his salvation. But that man might never have existed. That man might have been an illusion. A temporary madness brought on by stress and rebellion. "I want the truth," Maya said finally. "I want you to acknowledge that we're married. Bindingly married." "I don't want your money, Alexander. I never wanted your money. I wanted you." The words hung between them, naked and honest. Alexander stared at her, and she saw the war happening behind his eyes. Duty versus desire. Dynasty versus truth. "I turned 35 today," he said finally. "I no longer need my mother's permission to access my trust. I no longer need to be married to claim my full inheritance. The marriage, our marriage, is irrelevant now." There it was. The truth she had suspected, confirmed. "So I was just a tool," Maya said, her voice hollow. "A weapon you picked up and discarded when you didn't need it any." "No," Alexander said sharply. "It wasn't like that. What we had, it was real. But it was also a fantasy. We were two people escaping our lives for a moment. Couldn't last." "It could have," Maya said, "if you'd fought for it, if you'd fought for me." The door opened, and Cameron walked in, his 10 minutes clearly up. Behind him was a woman Maya had never met, but recognized instantly. Victoria Sterling, Alexander's mother. She was in her early 60s, impeccably dressed, with silver hair and eyes as cold as a winter sky. She looked at Maya the way someone might look at a stain on an expensive carpet. "So," Victoria said, her voice cultured and cutting, "this is the little problem I've been hearing about." She crossed the room with the bearing of a queen, and suddenly the space felt too small. "Miss Chun, is it? I understand you've been telling rather creative stories about my son." Maya lifted her chin. "They're not stories. They're facts. I married your son in Singapore 6 months ago. I have the marriage certificate to prove it." Victoria's expression didn't change. "Do you really? How fast? Tell me, Miss Chun, do you know what happens to young women who try to extort the Sterling family? We have excellent lawyers and very patient investigators. We will examine every moment of your life, every debt, every mistake, every secret. And when we're done, you'll wish you had never heard the Sterling name." "Mother," Alexander said, his voice tight with warning. "I'll handle this. You've already handled it quite poorly," Victoria said without looking at him. "That's why I'm here." She turned her attention back to Maya, and the disdain in her eyes was like a physical blow. "I'm prepared to offer you $2 million to sign a non-disclosure. Provide us with any marriage certificate you claim to have so it can be properly annulled and disappear from my son's life permanently. It's more money than you'll see in 10 lifetimes of serving food to your betters. Take it and go quietly. $2 million. It was an unimaginable sum. It was security for her mother's medical care, for her own future, for everything she had struggled. It was also an insult, a price tag on her dignity. Maya looked at Alexander, waiting for him to say something to defend her, to tell his mother that their marriage was was real and valid and not for sale. But Alexander was silent, his face unreadable. And in that silence, Maya finally understood. He had never intended to fight for her. He had never intended to make their marriage real. She had been useful for a moment, and now she was a problem to be solved with the Sterling family's preferred method: money and threats. "No," Maya said, the word clear and final. Victoria's eyes narrowed. "No, I don't want your money," Maya repeated. "I want my marriage acknowledged. I want my husband to stop pretending I don't exist." "That's unfortunate," Victoria said, "because my son is not your husband in any meaningful sense. Whatever ceremony you participated in was a drunken mistake, and it will be corrected." She reached into her purse and pulled out a thick envelope, dropping it on the table. "The offer stands for 24 hours. After that, we move to less pleasant solutions." She walked to the door, then paused and looked back at Alexander with an expression of profound disappointment. "Clean up your mess, Alexander. We have a reputation to protect." When she was gone, the room felt hollow. Cameron gave Maya one last contemptuous look and followed his mother out, leaving Maya and Alexander alone once more in the wreckage of their failed marriage. The silence after Victoria's departure was suffocating. Maya stood by the door, her heart hammering, while Alexander remained by the table, one hand still gripping the chair back as if it were the only thing keeping him upright. The envelope Victoria had left sat between them like a grenade with the pin pulled. $2 million. A fortune that could solve every problem in Maya's life except the one that mattered most. The man standing 10 feet away from her who could not meet her eyes. "You should take it," Alexander said finally, his voice flat and emotionless. "My mother is many things, but she's not bluffing. If you refuse, she'll make your life hell. She'll have investigators dig through your past, your mother's past, looking for anything she can use against you. She'll get you fired from here, make sure you can't work anywhere else in the city. She'll destroy you methodically and without remorse because that's what she does to threats." Maya felt something crack inside her chest. "Is that what I am to you? A threat?" "That's what you are to her," Alexander corrected, but he still would not look at her. "What my mother perceives as a threat to the Sterling name becomes a threat to everything. My position as CEO, the company's stock price, our relationships with investors and partners. She's built her entire life around protecting the Sterling legacy, and she sees you as a wrecking ball aimed at the foundation." "I don't want to destroy anything," Maya said, her voice breaking. "I just want you to tell the truth, to acknowledge what we did, what we were to each other, what we were," Alexander repeated, and now he did look at her, his gray eyes cold and distant. Past tense. That's the operative word, isn't it? "We were something in Singapore, but we're not anymore. We can't be, because your mother says so." Maya took a step toward him, anger surging through her grief. "Because it's inconvenient for your corporate image? Because I don't fit into your world of penthouses and board meetings? Because it was a mistake," Alexander said, and the words landed like blows. "A beautiful, reckless, impossible mistake. I was drowning in my father's shadow and my mother's expectations, and you were this bright, honest thing that made me feel human again. But that doesn't make it real. That doesn't make it sustainable." "We stood in front of an officiant and said vows," Maya said. "We signed legal documents. How's that not real?" "Because it was built on fantasy," Alexander shot back, his composure finally cracking. "We barely knew each other, Maya. A few weeks of conversation, a handful of dinners, one night of rebellion against my family, and suddenly we're married? That's not how real relationships work. That's not how real marriages work." "Then why did you do it?" Maya demanded. "Why did you ask me? If it was all just a fantasy, a moment of rebellion, why did you put this ring on my finger and tell me you loved me?" Alexander flinched as if she had struck him. He turned away, running a hand through his hair, and Maya saw the careful facade he had constructed beginning to crumble. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter, more vulnerable. "Because in that moment I believed it. I wanted it to be true. I wanted to be the man who could walk away from all of this, who could choose love over duty, who could be happy. But then I came home and reality hit me like a freight train." "Reality," Maya said bitterly. "You mean your mother and your brother and your billions of dollars?" "I mean responsibility," Alexander corrected, his voice hardening again. "I employ 15,000 people directly and affect the livelihoods of hundreds of thousands more. I run a company that my grandfather built from nothing, that my father nearly destroyed with his gambling and affairs, that I've spent the last 2 years salvaging. I can't just walk away from that because I fell for a woman during a business trip." "No one's asking you to walk away from it," Maya said. "I'm asking you to acknowledge that I exist, that we exist, and then what?" Alexander turned back to her, and there was genuine anguish in his eyes now. "You move into my penthouse? You come to board meetings and charity galas? You sit through dinners with people like Natasha who will tear you apart with smiles on their faces? You endure my mother's subtle and not so subtle sabotage? You give up your entire life to be MR's. Alexander Sterling, a title that comes with a target on your back and a gilded cage around your life?" The picture he painted was bleak, and Maya felt her certainty waver. She had not thought past the acknowledgement, past the simple need to be seen and validated. She had not considered what being Alexander Sterling's wife would actually mean in practice: the scrutiny, the pressure, the constant battle with his family. But then she thought of that night in Singapore, of the way he had looked at her like she was the answer to a question he had been asking his whole life, and she knew that the man who had married her was still in there somewhere beneath the armor of corporate responsibility. "I don't need a penthouse," Maya said quietly. "I don't need to go to your galas or meet your business partners. I just need you to stop lying to yourself, to me, to everyone." "We made a choice that night, Alexander. A choice that meant something, and you can't just unmake it because it's inconvenient. Life is full of choices we regret," Alexander said. "Full of roads we wish we hadn't taken. This is one of them." The words were designed to hurt, designed to push her away. And they succeeded. Maya felt tears prick her eyes, but she blinked them back. She would not cry in front of him. She would not give him the satisfaction of seeing how thoroughly he had broken her. "Fine," she said, her voice steady despite the pain radiating through her chest. "If that's how you feel, then divorce me. File the papers. End it properly. But don't you dare offer me money to disappear like I'm some kind of blackmailer. I won't take your mother's bribe. And I won't pretend this never happened. The annulment would be cleaner," Alexander said. "Legally simpler. We can claim the marriage was never consummated, that it was a drunken mistake made under duress." Maya felt her face flush hot with humiliation and rage. The marriage had been consummated thoroughly and tenderly in that hotel room overlooking Marina Bay. It had been the most intimate, most vulnerable night of her life, and now he wanted to legally erase it, to claim it never happened. "You want to lie under oath," she said. "You want to commit perjury to avoid admitting the truth. I want to protect both of us from a protracted legal battle that will destroy your reputation and damage mine," Alexander said. "An annulment is quick, quiet, and allows us both to move on." "I don't want to move on," Maya said, and she heard the desperation in her own voice. "I want to fight for what we had, for what we could be." "There is no we, Maya," Alexander said, and his voice was so cold, so final that it felt like a door slamming shut. "There was a moment of weakness on my part and hope on yours, but that's all. I'm sorry if I led you to believe otherwise. I'm sorry if I hurt you, but this ends here, tonight. You take the money, sign the paperwork, and we both walk away." Maya stared at him. This man she had married, this man she had loved, and saw a stranger. The Alexander who had held her hand in Singapore and talked about building a life together was gone, replaced by this cold corporate shell who spoke of their marriage like it was a failed business venture. Perhaps he had been right. Perhaps it had all been a fantasy, a beautiful lie they had told themselves. But if it was a lie, she wanted him to face it, to acknowledge it, not to bury it under legal documents and payoffs. "No," she said again, and this time the word came out strong and clear. "I won't make this easy for you, Alexander. If you want to end our marriage, you'll have to divorce me properly. You'll have to stand in front of a judge and explain why you want to dissolve a valid legal. You'll have to face the consequences of your choices." "Maya," Alexander started, but she cut him off. "I'm not doing this out of spite," she said. "I'm doing it because you need to face the truth. You can't keep running from difficult things, buying your way out of problems, pretending that anything that doesn't fit into your perfect corporate life doesn't exist. You married me. Own it." Alexander's jaw clenched, and for a moment she thought he might argue further. But then something in his expression shifted, and she saw resignation settle over him like a heavy cloak. "You're making a mistake," he said quietly. "My mother will come after you with everything she has. She'll make the next 6 months of your life a nightmare." "And for what? For a marriage that was doomed from the start? For a man who's telling you he can't be what you need?" "Maybe," Maya conceded, "but at least I'll have my dignity. At least I'll know I didn't let myself be erased." She turned toward the door, her legs unsteady but her resolve firm. As she reached for the handle, Alexander spoke again. "I did love you," he said, his voice so low she almost missed it. "In Singapore, I meant every word I said, but love isn't always enough." Maya paused, her hand on the cool metal of the door handle. She did not turn around. "Love is only not enough when you're not willing to fight for it," she said. "And you, Alexander Sterling, have never had to fight for anything in your life. Everything has been handed to you or bought for you or built for you by someone else. So when something requires actual sacrifice, actual courage, you fold. That's not love's failure. It's yours." The words hung in the air, damning and true. Maya pulled open the door and walked out, leaving Alexander alone in the private dining room with his mother's envelope and the wreckage of what might have been. As she walked back through the main dining area, she felt every eye on her. The other waitstaff, the remaining diners, Marcus at his station. They all stared at the shy, invisible waitress who had just gone toe-to-toe with one of the most powerful families in the city. Maya held her head high and kept walking. Claire caught up with her at the staff entrance. "Maya, what's going on? Marcus says you're done for the night. Are you okay?" Maya realized she was still wearing her apron. She untied it with shaking hands and handed it to Claire. "I don't know if I'm okay," she admitted, "but I'm done pretending." She collected her coat from the staff room, ignored the whispers and stares, and walked out into the cool night air. The city stretched out before her, glittering and indifferent to her small drama. Somewhere up there in those towers of glass and steel, Alexander Sterling was probably calling his lawyers, preparing to wage war against her refusal to disappear quietly. His mother was likely already mobilizing her investigators and fixers, and Maya Chun, armed with nothing but a marriage certificate and her stubborn refusal to be erased, was about to find out just how much a person could endure when they chose dignity over comfort. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out and saw a text from an unknown number. Miss Chun, this is Genevieve Adler, Senior Counsel for Sterling Global. We need to meet tomorrow to discuss the dissolution of your alleged marriage to Mr. Sterling. Please confirm a time. Maya stared at the message, then typed back a single word, no. She hit send and turned off her phone. Tomorrow would bring its own battles, its own pain. Tonight she just needed to get home to her small apartment, to call her mother and explain why her daughter had just declared war on a dynasty, to try to remember who she was before Alexander Sterling walked into her life and made her believe in impossible things. Maya's apartment was a fifth-floor walk-up in a neighborhood that real estate agents optimistically called transitional. The building was old but solid, with radiators that clanked through the night and walls thin enough that she knew her neighbor's television schedule by heart. It was nothing like the world Alexander inhabited with his penthouse views and his heated marble floors, but it was hers. She had earned every cramped square foot of it through double shifts and careful budgeting, and tonight it felt like a fortress. Her hands were still shaking as she climbed the stairs, exhaustion and adrenaline warring in her system. She had just refused $2 million and declared war on one of the most powerful families in the country. The magnitude of what she had done was beginning to sink in, and with it came a creeping sense of terror. What had she been thinking? Victoria Sterling was not bluffing about her capacity for destruction. Alexander had not been exaggerating the reach of his family's influence. Maya was a waitress with a sick mother and no safety net, and she had just positioned herself as an obstacle to people who demolished obstacles as a matter of routine. But beneath the fear was something else. Something harder and brighter. She had told the truth. She had refused to be bought or silenced or erased. For the first time in 6 months, she had stopped being invisible. And even though the consequences terrified her, there was a strange freedom in it. She unlocked her apartment door and stepped into the familiar small space. The studio was tidy out of necessity rather than preference. Every item carefully placed to maximize the limited room. A narrow bed against one wall, a small kitchenette, a table that doubled as desk and dining space, and one overstuffed chair salvaged from a sidewalk that faced the single window overlooking the fire escape. Maya dropped her coat on the chair and sank onto the bed, finally allowing herself to feel the full weight of the evening. Her phone, which she had turned off, sat heavy in her pocket like a bomb waiting to detonate. She knew what would be waiting when she turned it back on. Messages from Alexander's lawyers, probably calls from the restaurant, maybe even media inquiries if the story was already leaking. For a few more minutes, she allowed herself to exist in the quiet before the storm. Her eyes fell on the small wooden box on her nightstand, the one place where she kept her most precious possessions. Inside was the marriage certificate from Singapore, still crisp and official with its raised seal and formal calligraphy. She had looked at it so many times over the past 6 months that she had memorized every word, every loop of the officiant's signature. It was real, legal, binding, whatever Alexander wanted to believe. Whatever story he told himself to justify his abandonment, the document did not lie. Maya Chun and Alexander James Sterling were married. She pulled out the certificate now, running her fingers over the embossed seal. This single piece of paper was her only weapon against a family with unlimited resources and no scruples. It seemed absurdly inadequate, like bringing a kitchen knife to a gunfight, but it was also the truth, and truth had a power that money could not entirely erase. Her stomach growled, reminding her that she had not eaten since her shift started. She was supposed to have worked until midnight, supposed to have collected tips and smiled through another night of invisible service. Instead, she had appended her life in front of a room full of witnesses. Maya forced herself to stand and move to the kitchenette, assembling a simple meal of rice and vegetable. As she cooked, her mind replayed the confrontation with Alexander, analyzing every word, every expression. She kept coming back to that moment when he had said he loved her in Singapore, past tense, as if love was something that could simply expire when it became inconvenient. The food was ready, but Maya found she had no appetite. She sat at her small table, pushing rice around her plate, and finally acknowledged what she had been avoiding since leaving the restaurant. She needed to call her mother. Lily Chun was staying with Maya's aunt across town while undergoing treatment for the heart condition that had already required 2 surgeries and would likely require more. She was fragile, both physically and emotionally, and the stress of Maya's situation was the last thing she needed. But Maya could not keep this from her. Not when the Sterlings were about to start digging into their lives, looking for leverage and weaknesses. Her mother deserved to know what was coming. Maya picked up her phone, still off, and stared at it for a long moment. Then she powered it on. The device vibrated continuously for nearly a minute as messages flooded in. 12 missed calls, 23 text messages, 3 voicemails. She ignored all of them and dialed her mother's number. Lily answered on the second ring, her voice already tight with worry. Maya, I've been trying to reach you for hours. Your aunt saw something on social media, some video from the restaurant where you work. She said it looked like you, but it couldn't be you because the girl in the video was claiming to be married to Alexander Sterling, and that's completely ridiculous. So I told her it must be someone who looks like you, but then you weren't answering your phone and, Mom, Maya interrupted gently. It was me. And it's not ridiculous. I am married to Alexander Sterling. The silence on the other end of the line was absolute. Maya could picture her mother's face, the way her delicate features would go very still when she was processing something shocking. When Lily finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. What did you just say? So Maya told her. She told her everything, starting from her temporary job at Sterling Global 6 months ago, the negotiations in Mandarin, the way Alexander had noticed her, really seen her in a way no one else in that corporate world had. She told her about the weeks that followed, the dinners, the conversations, the way she had fallen in love with a man who seemed as trapped and lonely as she felt. She told her about Singapore, about Victoria Sterling's cruelty, about Alexander's impulsive proposal, about the midnight ceremony that had felt like a fairy tale. And then she told her about the 6 months of silence, about seeing Alexander deny it, about refusing the money and demanding acknowledgment. Lily listened without interrupting, and when Maya finished, her mother was crying. "Oh, my darling girl," Lily said, her voice thick with tears. "What have you done?" "I told the truth," Maya said. "I know it sounds crazy. I know it seems impossible, but I couldn't let them erase me, Mom. I couldn't let them pretend I don't exist, but they're the Sterlings," Lily said. And Maya heard the fear in her voice. "They have lawyers and money and power. What do we have?" "We have the truth," Maya said, knowing how naive it sounded even as she said it. "And the marriage certificate, paper," Lily said. "That's all that is. Paper against an empire." Her mother was not wrong. But Maya also knew her mother's history, knew that Lily Chun had once been a woman who fought for what she believed in. She had left her family in Beijing at 19 to come to America with nothing but a student visa and a dream. She had put herself through college working 3 jobs, had built a life through sheer determination, had raised Maya alone after her husband died with grace and strength. That woman was still in there somewhere beneath the illness and the fear. "You taught me never to let people make me small," Maya said quietly. "You taught me that dignity matters more than comfort. I'm just trying to live up to that." Lily was quiet for a moment, and when she spoke again, her voice was steadier. "Your grandfather used to say that the bamboo bends in the storm but does not break. But Maya, sometimes the storm is too strong. Sometimes survival means knowing when to bend." "I've been bending my whole life," Maya said. "I bent when kids at school made fun of my secondhand clothes. I bent when professors told me I should be grateful just to be in their classrooms. I bent when Alexander left me in Singapore without a word. I'm done bending, Mom. If I break, at least I'll break standing up." She heard her mother's sharp intake of breath. And then Lily laughed, a short, surprised sound. "You were so much like me when I was young," she said. "So stubborn, so brave, so foolish." "Is that a compliment?" Maya asked. "It's a warning," Lily said, but there was warmth in her voice now. "If you're going to do this, if you're really going to fight them, you need to be smart. They'll try to dig up dirt on us, on our family. They'll look for anything they can use." "I know," Maya said. "What will they find?" Lily sighed. "Nothing scandalous. We're boring people, Maya. I've paid my taxes, obeyed the law, raised you the best I could. Your father was a good man who died in an accident. There are no secrets, no skeleton, except me being married to their son," Maya said wryly. "Except that," Lily agreed. "Maya, I have to ask, do you love him, Alexander Sterling? Do you really love him, or is this about pride?" Maya thought about the question, really thought about it. Did she love the man who had looked at her tonight with cold dismissal in his eyes? Did she love the man who had offered her money to disappear? Or did she love a memory, a ghost? A version of Alexander that might never have really existed? "I don't know," she admitted. "I loved who I thought he was. The man in Singapore who held my hand and told me I made him feel like himself again. But tonight I saw someone different. Someone who values his dynasty more than truth, who values comfort more than integrity. I don't know if the man I loved is real or if I invented him." "Then why fight?" Lily asked. "If you're not sure, why not take the money and walk away?" "Because I need to know," Maya said. "I need to know if that man in Singapore was real. If the love we shared meant anything. And the only way to find out is to force Alexander to confront what we did, to face it instead of burying it. Maybe that makes me crazy. Maybe that makes me cruel. But I need to know." Lily was quiet for a moment, and Maya could hear the television in the background at her aunt's house, the normal sounds of a normal evening in a normal life. She wondered if she would ever have that kind of normalcy again. "Then I'll support you," Lily said finally. "But Maya, promise me something. Promise me that if it gets too dangerous, if they threaten you or hurt you, you'll walk away. No man is worth your life or your safety, not even a man you married, I promise." Maya said, though she was not sure it was a promise she could keep. They talked for a few more minutes about practical things, about Maya's job and Lily's upcoming doctor's appointment, about whether Maya should hire a lawyer of her own. Neither of them had money for legal representation, but Lily insisted they would find a way if it came to that. When they finally said goodbye, Maya felt both better and worse. Better because she was not alone, because her mother believed her and supported her. Worse because she had dragged her fragile, ill mother into a war with people who had no mercy. Maya finally looked at her other messages. Most were from Claire at the restaurant, a progression from concern to confusion to terse professionalism. The last one read, "Marcus says not to come in tomorrow. He'll call you." So she was suspended, possibly fired. That was not surprising. The restaurant was in a Sterling building, served Sterling clients, operated with Sterling money. Of course, they would side with their landlord over their waitress. There were several messages from numbers she did not recognize, likely reporters who had somehow gotten her contact information. She deleted those without reading them. And then there was one more message from Genevieve Adler. Alexander's lawyer. Miss Chun, your refusal to cooperate is noted. Please be advised that Sterling Global will proceed with legal action to dissolve the marriage. You will be served with papers within 48 hours. We strongly advise you to retain counsel. So it was beginning. The machinery of the Sterling Empire was grinding into motion, and Maya was standing directly in its path. She should have been terrified. Part of her was. But another part, the part that had stood up in that restaurant and spoken truth to power, felt almost calm. She had chosen this path. Now she would walk it and see where it led. Maya turned off her phone again, changed into pajamas, and lay in her small bed staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow she would need to find a lawyer, figure out how to keep her job or find a new one, prepare for whatever Victoria Sterling had planned. But tonight she let herself remember Singapore. She remembered the way Alexander had looked at her in the hotel suite, backlit by the city lights, his eyes soft with something that looked like hope. She remembered the way he had said her name like it was a prayer. She remembered believing, just for one night, that love could be enough. The memory hurt, but she held on to it anyway, because if that night had been real, if that love had been true even for a moment, then fighting for it was not the only thing that made sense. Morning arrived with brutal efficiency. Maya woke to sunlight streaming through her window and the immediate crushing weight of reality. For one blissful moment she thought the previous night might have been a nightmare, but then she saw her phone on the nightstand still turned off and remembered everything. She had declared war on the Sterling family with nothing but a marriage certificate and her stubborn pride as weapons. The smart thing would be to stay in bed, to pull the covers over her head and pretend the world did not exist. But Maya had never been able to afford the luxury of hiding from her problems. She forced herself up, showered, and dressed in her most professional outfit, a simple navy dress she had bought for job interviews. If she was going to face what was coming, she would do it with her armor on. She turned on her phone and watched as it exploded with notifications. Overnight, the story had metastasized across social media. Someone, probably Natasha, had posted the video from the restaurant. Maya watched herself on the small screen, pale and defiant, saying those fateful words, "I'm already your wife." The clip had been viewed over 2 million times. The comments were a toxic mixture of support and vitriol. Some people praised her courage, calling her a Cinderella standing up to cruel aristocrats. Others called her a gold digger, a liar, a delusional waitress having a breakdown. There were memes, hot takes, and think pieces already being written. Shy waitress claims secret marriage to billionaire CEO, read one headline. Sterling family denies marriage allegations, read another. Maya felt sick. She had wanted Alexander to acknowledge their marriage, but she had not wanted this circus. Her private pain had become public entertainment, her marriage reduced to clickbait and gossip fodder. There was a voice message from Marcus at the restaurant, his tone professionally apologetic. "Maya, I'm sorry, but given the situation and the attention it's bringing to the establishment, we're going to have to let you go. Your final paycheck will be mailed to you. I wish you the best." So it was official. She was unemployed, internet famous for all the wrong reasons, and about to be sued by a billionaire. Maya made coffee with shaking hands and sat at her small table trying to formulate a plan. She needed a lawyer, but lawyers cost money she did not have. She needed to protect herself from whatever investigation Victoria Sterling was already conducting, and she needed to figure out how to survive the next few months without a job while fighting a legal battle against people with infinite resources. Her phone rang, an unknown number. Maya almost did not answer, but something made her pick up. "Miss Chun?" The voice was female, older, with a slight accent Maya could not place. "This is Dr. Sarah Novak. I'm a family law attorney and I'd like to offer you my services. I can't afford a lawyer," Maya said. "I saw the retainer fees online. I don't have that kind of money." "I'm aware," Dr. Novak said. "I'm offering to represent you pro bono. No charge." Maya's suspicion flared instantly. "Why? What's in it for you?" "Publicity primarily, doctor," Novak said with refreshing honesty. "Your case is already national news. If I represent you successfully, it will be excellent for my practice, but beyond that I have personal reasons. I've spent 30 years watching powerful families destroy ordinary people in family courts. The Sterling family's behavior, offering you money to disappear, threatening you, it's textbook abuse of power. I'd like to stop them." It sounded too good to be true, which meant it probably was. But Maya was also desperate, and desperation made people take risks. What kind of personal reason?" Maya asked. Dr. Novak was quiet for a moment. 20 years ago, I represented a young woman in a case against a different wealthy family. We lost because they had better lawyers, more money, and fewer scruples. My client was destroyed. I've been waiting for a case like yours ever since. A chance to prove that truth can win against money. Will you meet with me?" Maya looked around her tiny apartment at the single window and the secondhand furniture and the life she had built through sheer determination. She had already lost her job. She was already in the headlines. She had nothing left to lose except the truth itself. "Yes," she said. "When and where?" They arranged to meet at Dr. Novak's office in 2 hours. Maya used the time to organize her documents, gathering the marriage certificate, copies of texts between her and Alexander from 6 months ago, photos from Singapore, anything that could prove their relationship had been real. She also printed out articles about the Sterling family, trying to understand exactly who she was fighting. Alexander Sterling, CEO of Sterling Global at 35, had taken over the company after his father's death from a heart attack 2 years ago. Under his leadership, the company had doubled its market value. He was considered brilliant, ruthless, and utterly devoted to the Sterling legacy. There were photos of him at charity galas, always in a tuxedo, always with different beautiful women on his arm, never smiling with his eyes. Cameron Sterling, his younger brother by 3 years, was the opposite. He was charming, reckless, and constantly in the tabloids for his partying and brief relationships with models and actresses. He held a meaningless vice president title at Sterling Global but rarely showed up to the office. He lived off his trust fund and seemed content to be the family disappointment. Victoria Sterling, the matriarch, was the most formidable. Widowed young when her husband died, she had steered the family through scandals and financial crises with an iron hand. She sat on multiple corporate boards, chaired several prestigious charities, and was known for her ruthless protection of the Sterling name. There were whispers of affairs she had buried, competitors she had destroyed, anyone who threatened her family's reputation simply vanishing from public life. Maya was going up against all of them with a lawyer she had just met and a marriage certificate that might as well have been written in disappearing ink for all the Sterling family cared. Dr. Sarah Novak's office was in a modest building far from the gleaming towers downtown. The waiting room was small but tastefully decorated, with plants on the windowsill and artwork that looked handmade rather than expensive. Dr. Novak herself was in her 60s, with steel gray hair cut short and sharp, intelligent eyes behind stylish glasses. She wore a simple suit and no jewelry except for a wedding band. She shook Maya's hand with a firm grip and ushered her into a private office. "Thank you for seeing me," Maya said, settling into a chair across from the lawyer's desk. "Thank you for calling. I've been following your story since the video appeared online last night. Tell me everything from the beginning and don't leave anything out, no matter how embarrassing or damaging you think it might be. I need the complete truth to represent you effectively." So Maya told the story again, this time with even more detail. She told Dr. Novak about her temporary job at Sterling Global, about translating negotiations, about the way Alexander had started asking her opinion on more than just language. She told her about their growing friendship, the dinners, the way they had opened up to each other about their loneliness and their trapped lives. She told her about Singapore, about Victoria's cruelty, about the impulsive wedding, about the perfect night that had followed. And then she told her about the silence, about Alexander's disappearance, about working at the restaurant and seeing him walk in, about refusing the money and demanding acknowledgement. Dr. Novak listened without interrupting, taking notes on a legal pad. When Maya finished, the lawyer sat back and studied her with those sharp eyes. "Do you still love him?" she asked. Maya had been asked this question twice now, and she still did not have a good answer. "I don't know," she admitted. "I love who he was in Singapore. I hate who he was at the restaurant. I don't know which version." "Both," Dr. Novak said. "People are complex, Miss Chun. He can be both the man who married you in a moment of genuine feeling and the man who abandoned you out of fear and obligation. The question isn't which version is real. The question is which version will show up in court." "What do you mean, Maya?" "The Sterling family will try to portray you as a gold digger, a delusional stalker, or a con artist. They'll argue that the marriage was invalid, that you coerced Alexander into it somehow, that it was never consummated, that it should be annulled. To fight that, we need to prove the marriage was entered into freely by both parties, that it was a legitimate union, and that Alexander's current denial is revisionist history. Can we prove that?" Maya thought about the texts, the photos, the witnesses who had seen them together in Singapore. "I think so," she said. "But they'll have witnesses too. They'll have people who'll say Alexander never mentioned me, never acted like a married man." "Of course they will," Dr. Novak said. "They have unlimited resources to manufacture a narrative, but we have something they don't. We have the truth, and the truth has a way of being stubborn. It leaves traces, creates inconsistencies and lies, forces people to choose between their conscience and their loyalty." She leaned forward, her expression intense. "Maya, I need you to understand something. This case is going to get ugly. The Sterlings will investigate every aspect of your life. They'll try to paint you as unworthy of their son, as someone who doesn't belong in their world. They'll use your background, your mother's immigration history, your financial struggles. Everything is ammunition. Can you handle that?" Maya thought about her mother, about the life Lily had built from nothing, about the pride with which she had raised her daughter. "Let them investigate," she said. "They won't find anything except two women who worked hard and played by the rules. If they think being poor is shameful, that says more about them than it does about us." Dr. Novak smiled, a fierce expression. "Good. That's the energy you'll need. Now let's talk strategy. The Sterling's lawyer, Genevieve Adler, is excellent. She's been with the family for decades, and she knows every trick in the book. She'll try to bully you into accepting a settlement. Don't. Every time they offer you money, it's an admission that they're worried about going to court." "Why would they be worried?" Maya asked. "They have all the power, because divorce proceedings are public," Dr. Novak explained. "Everything gets entered into the court record. Every text message, every photo, every witness statement. Alexander Sterling would have to testify under oath. He'd have to explain why he married you, why he abandoned you, what his intentions were, and he'd have to do it all in front of cameras and reporters. The Sterling family has built their empire on a carefully controlled image. A messy public divorce threatens that image, so our leverage is embarrassment, Maya said. That's hardly a weapon. It's more than you think, Dr. Novak countered. These people care more about their reputation than almost anything else. Victoria Sterling has spent decades crafting the Sterling family as American royalty, as exemplars of success and dignity. Having her son's secret marriage to a waitress played out in court undermines that narrative. It makes them look fallible, human, messy. They'll do almost anything to avoid that. Almost anything except acknowledge the marriage, Maya said bitterly. We'll see, Dr. Novak said. Finds the threat of exposure is more powerful than exposure itself. We file a response to their divorce petition that lays out everything: the courtship, the wedding, the abandonment. We make it clear that if they want a divorce, they'll have to earn it in open court. Then we wait and see if their pride can withstand the scrutiny. It sounded like a plan, though Maya was not sure it was a good one. But it was better than facing the Sterlings alone, and Dr. Novak's confidence was infectious. They spent the next hour going through Maya's evidence, with Dr. Novak photographing documents and making notes. This is good, the lawyer said, examining the marriage certificate. This is a legal document from a recognized authority. They can't simply wish it away. They'll have to prove fraud or coercion, and that will be difficult given your evidence of a genuine relationship. As Maya was preparing to leave, Dr. Novak asked one more question. What do you want from this, Maya? At the end of the day, what's your goal? Do you want the marriage to continue? You want a divorce with a settlement? Do you want an apology? What does victory look like for you? Maya thought about it. She thought about Alexander in the private dining room, his face cold and closed, saying their marriage was a mistake. She thought about the man in Singapore who had held her hand and promised her a future, and she thought about her own dignity, her own worth, her own truth. I want him to admit it was real, she said finally. I want Alexander to stand up in front of everyone and acknowledge that he married me, that he loved me, that I wasn't just a mistake or a fantasy. I want the truth. After that, I don't know. Maybe we can move forward. Maybe we can't, but I need the truth first. Dr. Novak nodded slowly. That's the hardest thing to get from people like the Sterlings. They've spent so long constructing their reality that they forget where the lies end and the truth begins. But we'll try. We'll fight for your truth, Maya, and we'll see if it's strong enough to break through their walls. Alexander Sterling had not slept in 36 hours. He sat in his home office, the city lights spreading before him like a field of fallen stars, and tried to remember the last time he had felt in control of his own life. The irony was not lost on him. He commanded a corporation worth billions, made decisions that affected thousands of people, and could move markets with a single statement, but he could not control one shy waitress who refused to disappear. His desk was covered with reports from the investigative team his mother had hired. They had been thorough, he had to give them that. Every detail of Maya Chun's life had been documented, analyzed, and cross-referenced. Her birth certificate, her school records, her mother's immigration papers, her father's death certificate, every address she had ever lived at, every job she had ever held. They had found nothing scandalous. Maya was exactly what she appeared to be. A hard-working young woman who had been dealt a difficult hand and played it with grace and dignity. The investigators had interviewed her former employers, her neighbors, even tracked down people who had gone to school with her. The picture that emerged was consistent. Maya Chun was quiet, kind, reliable, and honest to a fault. She returned extra change to cashiers. She helped elderly neighbors carry groceries. She had worked 2 jobs to pay for her mother's medical bills without complaint. She was, in every measurable way, a good person, which made what Alexander had done to her even more unforgivable. His phone buzzed with another message from Genevieve Adler. Miss Chun has retained counsel. Dr. Sarah Novak. She's a crusader type. High-profile cases against wealthy families. This is going to be a fight. Alexander closed his eyes. Of course, Maya had found a lawyer who would turn this into a battle. Of course, she'd refused to make it easy. That was who she was. She did not bend, did not compromise her principles, did not let herself be bought. It was one of the things he had loved about her in Singapore. It was one of the things that was going to destroy them both now. His mother had called twice in the past hour, but Alexander had not answered. He knew what she wanted. She wanted him to be more aggressive, to crush Maya before she could do real damage to the family name. Victoria Sterling did not understand restraint when it came to threats. She believed in overwhelming force and making examples, in ensuring that anyone who challenged the Sterling family learned to regret it. But Maya was not a business rival or a hostile journalist. She was a woman he had married, a woman he had made promises to, a woman who had looked at him with such hope and trust that it had made him believe, just for a moment, that he could be someone different, someone better. His computer screen displayed the viral video from the restaurant, and Alexander forced himself to watch it again. He saw himself sitting at the table, saw Cameron drop the money, saw Maya's face as she refused it, and then he heard her voice, clear and steady. "I'm already your wife." He watched himself stand up, watched the shock and panic cross his face, watched himself collapse as if her words had physically struck him. In a way they had. The truth delivered with such simple directness had been more devastating than any accusation or threat. She had not asked for anything. She had not demanded anything. She had simply stated a fact, and that fact had shattered the careful fiction he had been maintaining. There was a knock on his office door, and Cameron entered without waiting for permission. His brother looked tired, his usual charm dimmed by worry. "We need to talk," Cameron said, dropping into a chair across from Alexander's desk. "Mother is losing her mind. She wants to go nuclear on this girl, and I think that's a mistake." Alexander looked at his brother in surprise. Cameron rarely involved himself in family business, preferring to remain above the fray of corporate politics and family drama. "Since when do you care about my personal life?" Alexander asked. "Since your personal life became a public spectacle that's affecting the company's stock price," Cameron said bluntly. "We dropped 3% today because investors are worried about instability in leadership. The board is asking questions, and Mother is making it worse by treating this like we're at war." "We are at war," Alexander said. "Maya refused the settlement. She's hired a lawyer. She's going to fight this publicly." "Then maybe you should ask yourself why," Cameron said, leaning forward. "Why would a waitress with nothing turn down $2 million and choose to fight one of the wealthiest families in the country? What could she possibly gain from that?" "Revenge," Alexander said. "Attention, a bigger payday down the line." Cameron shook his head. "I watched her face in that video, Alex. I was there. I saw her before she made her announcement, when she was just serving our table. She wasn't looking for attention. She wasn't scheming. She was just doing her job. And then you showed up and she broke." "Broke?" Alexander repeated. "She looked at you like you had killed her," Cameron said quietly. "Like you had taken something precious and destroyed it. That's not the look of a gold digger who found her mark. That's the look of someone whose heart you broke." Alexander stood abruptly and walked to the window, putting distance between himself and his brother's uncomfortable observations. "You don't understand the situation," he said. "I was protecting her. I was protecting both of us." "By abandoning her?" Cameron asked. "By pretending she doesn't exist?" "Alex, I know I'm not the responsible one in this family. I know I'm the screw-up who parties too much and disappoints Mother regularly. But even I can see that what you did to that girl was wrong." The words stung because they were true. Alexander had spent 6 months convincing himself that leaving Maya was the right choice, the noble choice, the choice that would keep her safe from his family's toxicity. But the truth was simpler and uglier. He had been afraid of his mother's wrath, afraid of losing his position, afraid of being the man who chose love over duty. "What do you want me to say?" Alexander asked, his voice rough. "That I made a mistake? That I should have brought her home and faced Mother? That I should have fought for her?" "I want you to be honest," Cameron said, "with yourself, if not with me. Did you love her? When you married her in Singapore, was it real?" Alexander thought about that night. He thought about the way Maya had looked at him when he proposed, like he had offered her the moon instead of a hasty wedding in a foreign country. He thought about the vows they had exchanged, simple and heartfelt, about the way she had kissed him afterward with tears streaming down her face. He thought about waking up beside her the next morning and feeling, for the first time in years, like his life belonged to him. "Yes," he admitted, "it was real. In that moment, it was the most real thing I'd ever felt." "Then why?" Cameron started, but Alexander cut him off. "Because real doesn't mean sustainable," he said harshly. "Real doesn't mean it can survive in this world, with this family. I loved her, Cameron. I loved her enough to know that bringing her into our life would destroy her. Have you met our mother? Have you seen what she does to people who threaten her vision of the Sterling family?" Cameron was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke, his voice was sad. "You're probably right. Mother would have made her life hell. But Alex, you married her. You made promises, and then you just disappeared. That's the part I can't understand. If you loved her enough to marry her, how could you love her so little that you'd leave her without even an explanation?" "I thought it would be kinder," Alexander said. "A clean break. Let her think I was a bastard who used her. Let her hate me. Hate is easier to move on from than heartbreak." "Is it?" Cameron asked. "Because from where I'm sitting, you gave her both. She hates you for leaving, and her heart is still broken. You didn't protect her, Alex. You just made her suffer alone." The words landed like physical blows. Alexander gripped the window frame, his knuckles white. He had told himself so many stories about his choice, so many justifications, but Cameron's simple observation cut through all of them. He had hurt Maya in the worst possible way, and calling it protection did not change that. "So what do I do now?" Alexander asked, and he was surprised by how lost he sounded. Cameron stood and joined him at the window, both brothers looking out at the city they had been raised to command. "You figure out what you actually want," Cameron said. "Not what Mother wants, not what's best for the company, not what makes the most strategic sense. What do you want, Alexander? Do you want to be married to Maya-chan? Do you want a future with her? Or do you want to be free of her? Because until you answer that question honestly, you're just making everyone miserable, including yourself." After Cameron left, Alexander sat alone with that question. What did he want? He picked up his phone and scrolled through his photos until he found the ones from Singapore. There were only a handful. Maya laughing at something he said over dinner, her eyes bright with joy. Maya sleeping in the morning light, her face peaceful. Maya on the hotel balcony looking out at the city, her hand in his. He had looked at these photos 100 times in the past 6 months, always late at night when he was alone and the weight of his responsibilities felt unbearable. He had told himself he was remembering a mistake, a moment of weakness, but the truth was simpler. He was remembering the only time in his adult life when he had felt truly happy. His phone rang. His mother again. This time Alexander answered. "I heard you've been ignoring my calls," Victoria said, her voice crisp with disapproval. "We need to discuss strategy. Genevieve says the Chun girl has hired that ambulance chaser Novak. They're gonna make this a circus." Maybe we should let them, Alexander said, the words coming out before he could stop them. What? Victoria's voice was sharp as a knife. You heard me, Alexander said, something reckless awakening in his chest. Maybe we should let this play out publicly. Let the truth come out. The truth? Victoria laughed, a cold sound. The truth is that you made a drunken mistake in Singapore that we've been trying to clean up for 6 months. The truth is that this girl is trying to blackmail us. Truth is that you need to be more careful about who you spend time with. That's your truth, Alexander said. It's not mine. Alexander James Sterling, Victoria said, her voice dropping to a dangerous register. You will not throw away everything this family has built for some waitress you knew for 3 weeks. I did not raise you to be this foolish. You didn't raise me at all, Alexander said, and the words felt like freedom. You raised a CEO. You raised an heir. You raised someone to carry on the Sterling name. But you never once asked me what I wanted or who I wanted to be. Because what you want is irrelevant, Victoria said. You have responsibilities. You have a legacy to uphold. Your father understood that. Why can't you? My father drank himself to death trying to meet your expectations, Alexander said. Is that what you want for me? Another Sterling man who destroys himself trying to be perfect for you? The silence on the other end of the line was absolute. Alexander had never spoken to his mother this way, had never challenged her directly. The Sterling family operated on respect and hierarchy, and he had just violated both. I see, Victoria said finally, her voice ice. That girl has poisoned your mind. She's made you weak, made you forget who you are, but I will not let her destroy this family. If you won't handle her, I will. She hung up before Alexander could respond. He sat holding the phone, feeling the foundation of his entire life shifting beneath him. He had spent 35 years being the dutiful son, the responsible heir, the man who put the family first. And in one moment of honesty, he had burned that identity to the ground. His phone buzzed with a text. It was from a number he did not recognize, but he knew instantly who it was. Mr. Sterling, this is Maya. Dr. Novak gave me your personal number. I'm not asking for anything. I just want you to know that I'm not trying to hurt you or your family. I'm just trying to exist. I'm trying to not be erased. That's all I ever wanted. To matter, to be real. If you can't give me that, then at least be honest about why. Alexander read the message 3 times. Each word striking him with surgical precision. She was not asking for money. She was not making threats. She was asking for the one thing he had been unable to give her: acknowledgement. Simple, honest acknowledgement that she existed, that what they had shared was real, that she mattered. He thought about Cameron's question, "What do you want?" He thought about his mother's threats and expectations. He thought about the company, the responsibilities, the legacy he had been born to carry. And then he thought about Maya sleeping in the morning light, peaceful and trusting, believing in a future they would build together. Alexander began typing a response. Alexander stared at his phone for 10 minutes before he finally sent his response. 3 simple words. Can we talk? He watched the screen, waiting for the 3 dots that would indicate Maya was typing. They appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, her response came through. When and where? They arranged to meet at a small park on the edge of the city, far from the gleaming towers downtown and the watchful eyes of both their worlds. It was neutral territory, a place where neither of them belonged, which made it perfect. Alexander arrived first, driving himself in a nondescript sedan rather than his usual town car with driver. He sat on a bench facing a small pond where ducks paddled in lazy circle, oblivious to human drama. The park was quiet on this weekday afternoon, just a few mothers with strollers and an elderly man feeding the birds. Alexander felt absurdly exposed, like he had stepped out of his life and into someone else's. Maya appeared 20 minutes later, walking down the path with her hands shoved deep in her coat pockets. She had dressed simply in jeans and a sweater, her dark hair loose around her shoulders instead of pulled back in her usual bun. She looked younger this way, more vulnerable, and Alexander felt something twist painfully in his chest. She sat down on the opposite end of the bench, maintaining careful distance between them. For a long moment, neither spoke. They just sat there, 2 people who had promised each other forever, and then broken that promise in the span of 6 months. Thank you for coming, Alexander said finally. Maya nodded but said nothing. Her eyes were fixed on the pond, watching the ducks with intense concentration as if they held the answers to questions she was afraid to ask. I don't know where to start, Alexander admitted. I've rehearsed 100 different speeches in my head, and they all sound hollow. Then don't make a speech, Maya said quietly. Just tell me the truth. Why did you leave me in Singapore? The question was simple, but the answer was infinitely complex. Alexander tried to find words that would make her understand without sounding like he was making excuses. When I got back, he began, my mother and Cameron had already moved against me. They had convinced keyboard members that I was unstable, that my father's death had affected my judgment. They were preparing to force a vote to remove me as CEO. My mother gave me an ultimatum: end whatever rebellion I was staging. Fall back in line or lose everything. And you chose everything, Maya said. It was not a question. I chose what I thought was the responsible choice, Alexander said. I chose to protect what my grandfather built, what 15,000 employees depend on for their livelihoods. I chose duty over desire. You chose fear over courage, Maya corrected, finally turning to look at him. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears, but her voice was steady. You were afraid of your mother, afraid of losing your position, afraid of being the man who chose love. So you ran and you made me the casualty of your cowardice. The words stung because they were true. You're right, Alexander said, and the admission felt like breaking free from chains he had been wearing so long he had forgotten they were there. I was afraid. I've been afraid my entire life. Afraid of disappointing my father. Afraid of failing the family legacy. Afraid of being anything less than perfect. And when I met you, when we got married, I felt free for the first time. But then that fear came rushing back stronger than before, and I let it control me. So you just abandoned, Maya said, and now the tears did fall, tracking silently down her cheeks. No explanation, no goodbye, no acknowledgement that I even existed. Do you have any idea what that did to me, Alexander? I waited for you. I believed you would come back. I made excuses for you every day for 3 months before I finally accepted that you had thrown me away like I was nothing. You were never nothing, Alexander said urgently, leaning toward her. Maya, you were everything. You were the first person in my life who saw me as something other than a sterling, something other than a position or a asset. You saw me, really saw me, and you made me believe I could be someone different, someone better. Then why? Maya's voice broke and she had to stop and compose herself. If I meant so much, why was it so easy for you to walk away? It wasn't easy, Alexander said. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. Every day I wanted to call you, to explain, to beg you to forgive me. But every day that passed made it harder. The lies I told myself, the justifications I constructed, they became a wall between us. I convinced myself you were better off without me, that bringing you into my world would destroy you, that leaving you was an act of love rather than cowardice. That's convenient logic for someone who got what they wanted, Maya said bitter. You kept your company, your position, your perfect life. What did I get? 6 months of wondering what I did wrong, 6 months of thinking I wasn't good enough, 6 months of grief for a marriage you decided didn't matter. Alexander flinched at the pain in her voice. I'm sorry, he said, and the words felt inadequate, too small to carry the weight of his regret. I'm so sorry, Maya. I was wrong about everything. I was wrong to leave you, wrong to stay silent, wrong to offer you money like you were a problem to be solved. I was wrong. Maya wiped her tears with the back of her hand, a gesture so vulnerable it made Alexander ache. What do you want from me now? She asked. Why did you ask me here? To apologize? To convince me to drop the legal fight? To offer me more money? I want to tell you the truth, Alexander said. No more lies. No more justifications, just the truth. He took a deep breath, feeling like he was standing on the edge of a cliff. I loved you in Singapore, and I love you now. I never stopped. Every decision I made, every terrible choice, was me trying to protect you from my family and protect myself from having to choose between you and everything else. But I was wrong to think I had to choose. I was wrong to think love was a weakness rather than a strength. And I was wrong to believe that the sterling legacy mattered more than the promises I made to you. Maya stared at him, her expression unreadable. You love me, she repeated, the words flat and skeptical. Yes, Alexander said simply. Then prove it, Maya said. Because words are cheap, Alexander. You said you loved me in Singapore too, and then you disappeared. If you love me now, show me. Not with money, not with apologies. Show me by being the man I thought I married. The man who was brave enough to choose his own happiness. What do you want me to do? Alexander asked. I want you to acknowledge our marriage, Maya said, her voice strengthening. Publicly, not in a courtroom, not through lawyers. I want you to stand up and tell the truth. Tell your mother, tell the board, tell the world that you married me because you love me and that you were wrong to deny it. The request was both simple and impossible. It would mean openly defying his mother, potentially damaging his relationship with the board, inviting scrutiny and scandal. It would mean choosing Maya over everything else, exactly what he had been afraid to do 6 months ago. But as Alexander sat there looking at the woman he had married and abandoned, he realized that all the things he had been trying to protect, all the responsibilities and legacies and expectations, meant nothing if he lost the one thing that had made him feel human. Okay, he said. Maya's eyes widened. Okay, I'll do it, Alexander said, the decision crystallizing as he spoke. I'll acknowledge our marriage publicly. I'll tell the board, I'll tell my mother, I'll hold a press conference if that's what you want. I'll stop hiding from the truth. Why now? Maya asked, suspicion and hope warring in her expression. Why are you suddenly willing to do what you wouldn't do 6 months ago? Because 6 months ago I thought I was protecting you, Alexander said. But watching you stand up in that restaurant, watching you refuse to be erased, watching you fight for the truth even when it would have been easier to take the money and disappear, I realized something. You don't need my protection. You never did. You're the strongest person I know, and I was a fool to think you couldn't handle my world. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box, the one he had been carrying for 6 months. He opened it to reveal a ring, an elegant diamond set in platinum, the engagement ring he should have given her in Singapore but had been too impulsive to remember. This isn't a bribe, he said quickly, seeing her eyes go to the ring. This is an apology and a promise. If you'll give me a chance to make this right, if you'll let me be the husband I should have been, I'll spend the rest of my life proving that I choose you. Not the company, not the legacy, not my mother's approval. You. Maya looked at the ring, then at Alexander, then back at the ring. You're asking me to trust you again? She said slowly. After everything, you're asking me to believe that this time will be different. Yes. Alexander said. I know I don't deserve your trust. I know I've done nothing to earn it, but I'm asking anyway because I can't imagine spending the rest of my life wondering what would have happened if I had been brave enough to fight for you. The silence stretched between them, heavy with possibility and fear. A duck quacked loudly from the pond, breaking the tension, and despite everything, Maya laughed. A short, surprised sound. This is insane, she said. All of this, the secret marriage, the abandonment, the public scandal, and now you're proposing to me again in a park with ducks as witnesses. This is the most ridiculous thing that's ever happened to me. Is that a yes? Alexander asked, hope and terror mixing in his chest. Maya was quiet for a long moment, studying him with those dark, intelligent eyes that had first caught his attention 6 months ago. I need time, she said finally. I need to see that you mean what you say, that this isn't just another impulse that you'll run from when it gets difficult. I need to see you actually stand up to your mother, actually acknowledge our marriage, actually choose me over everything else. How much time? Alexander asked. However long it takes, Maya said. I'm not going to rush into trusting you again, Alexander. You broke my heart once. I'm not going to give you the chance to do it twice unless I'm certain you've changed. Fair enough, Alexander said. He closed the ring box and held it out to her. Will you at least keep this? As a promise that I'm not going anywhere this time, and no matter how long it takes, I'll wait for you to be ready. Maya hesitated, then took the box. She held it in her hand like it was something fragile and dangerous. I'll keep it, she said, but I'm not wearing it. Not until you prove you mean what you say. Deal, Alexander said. They sat in silence for a few more minutes, watching the ducks circle the pond. It was not the romantic reconciliation of movies, no dramatic kiss or tearful embrace. It was two wounded people beginning the careful process of trust, each step tentative and uncertain, but it was a beginning. And for the first time in 6 months, Alexander felt like he could breathe. I should go, Maya said finally, standing up. My mother will worry if I'm out too long. Can I drive you home? Alexander asked. Maya shook her head. Not yet. I'll take the bus. She started to walk away, then paused and turned back. Alexander? Yes? Don't make me regret giving you this chance. I won't, he promised. I swear to you, Maya, I won't. She nodded once, then walked away down the path, the ring box clutched in her hand. Alexander watched until she disappeared around a bend, then pulled out his phone. He had calls to make, battles to fight, a mother to defy. He had a marriage to acknowledge, and a truth to tell. And for the first time in his life, he was going to choose love over fear. The Sterling Global Boardroom occupied the entire 80th floor of the company's headquarters. It was a temple to corporate power, with a table that could seat 30 executives, walls lined with portraits of previous Sterling patriarchs, and windows that offered a view of the city that made you feel like a god looking down on mortals. Alexander had called an emergency board meeting for 9 the next morning. He had exactly 12 hours to prepare for the most important battle of his life, and he was not naive enough to think his mother would let him wage it alone. She arrived at his penthouse at midnight, using the key she had refused to return after his father's death. Alexander was sitting at his dining table, surrounded by documents and legal briefs, when he heard the private elevator chime. He did not look up when Victoria walked in, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. You didn't answer my calls, Victoria said, her voice cold with controlled fury. I had nothing to say, Alexander replied, still focused on the papers in front of him. Then perhaps you'll listen while I speak, Victoria said. She circled the table like a predator, her presence filling the room. I've spoken with every board member. I've reminded them of their loyalty to this family, of the fortunes we've made them, of the consequences of betrayal. 14 of the 18 will vote with me no matter what you say tomorrow. Alexander finally looked up at his mother. She was perfectly composed as always, her silver hair immaculate, her suit pressed and tailored. But he saw something in her eyes he had never seen before. Genuine fear. She was afraid of losing control, afraid of him making a choice she could not manipulate or manage. I'm not asking for a vote, Alexander said. I'm informing the board of a personal matter that may affect the company. That's all. A personal matter, Victoria repeated, her voice dripping with disdain. You mean your sordid little mistake in Singapore? Your marriage to a waitress that you're apparently determined to acknowledge publicly despite every rational argument against it. She's not a mistake, Alexander said, his voice hardened. Her name is Maya, and she's my wife. Those are facts, Mother. I'm done pretending otherwise. Victoria laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. Your wife. Do you hear how ridiculous that sounds? You knew her for 3 weeks before you married her in what can only be described as a temporary psychotic break. You've been separated for 6 months, and now you want to parade this farce in front of the board and the world because what? Because she refused to take our money? Because she hired a lawyer? Because she's backing you into a corner? Because I love her, Alexander said simply. And because I was wrong to deny it. The words hung in the air, and Victoria's face went very still. Love, she said, the word like poison on her tongue. Your father loved me, you know, in the beginning. He wrote me poetry, brought me flowers, promised me the world, and then he discovered that love doesn't pay bills or build empires or protect you from enemies. Love is a luxury, Alexander. Pleasant distraction, but it's not a foundation for a life. Maybe that's why Dad drank himself to death, Alexander said quietly. Maybe he couldn't bear the weight of a life built on everything except love. Victoria's hand cracked across his face before he could react, the slap echoing in the vast space. Alexander's head snapped to the side, his cheek burning. He had never seen his mother lose control like this. had never seen the mask slip so completely. "You know nothing about your father," Victoria said, her voice shaking with rage. "You know nothing about the sacrifices I made, the battles I fought, the world I built for you and your brother. I turned your father's mediocrity into an empire. I made the Sterling name mean something, and I will not let you destroy it for some girl you barely know." Alexander touched his stinging cheek and looked at his mother, really looked at her. He saw a woman who had traded every soft emotion for armor, who had built an empire on fear and control, who had lost her humanity in pursuit of a legacy. He saw his future if he continued down the path she had laid out for him. "I'm sorry, Mother," he said. And he meant it. "I'm sorry that you never knew what it felt like to be loved more than you were used. I'm sorry that Dad couldn't be the man you needed him to be. I'm sorry that you've spent your whole life at war with a world that wouldn't accept you on your terms. But I'm not going to live that way. I'm not going to sacrifice my happiness on the altar of the Sterling name." Victoria stared at him, and for a moment he thought she might strike him again. Instead, she drew herself up to her full height, her composure returning like a mask sliding back into place. "If you do this," she said, her voice ice, "if you acknowledge this marriage tomorrow, you will have made an enemy of me. I will vote to remove you as CEO. I will fight you for control of the company. I will make sure every shareholder knows that you're unstable, that you make reckless decisions, that you care more about a waitress than about the company your grandfather built." "I know," Alexander said, "and I'm doing it anyway." Victoria's eyes narrowed. "Why? Why are you throwing everything away for her? What does she have that's worth this sacrifice?" Alexander thought about Maya in the park, about the way she had looked at him with those eyes full of hurt and hope. He thought about the simple truth she had spoken. Love is only not enough when you're not willing to fight for it. "She has nothing," he said. "No money, no power, no connections. All she has is her integrity, her courage, and her refusal to be erased. And that's everything, Mother. That's more than all the Sterling money and power combined." Victoria stood silent for a long moment, and Alexander saw something he had never seen before. Defeat, not surrender, but the recognition that she had lost her son to something she could not control or manipulate. "You're just like your father," she said finally, and it was not a compliment. "Weak, sentimental, doomed to disappoint everyone who depends on you." She walked to the elevator, her spine straight, her head high. Before the doors closed, she delivered her final shot. "When this ends badly, and it will, don't come to me for help. You've made your choice. Now live with it." The elevator doors closed and Alexander was alone. He looked at the documents scattered across his table, the carefully prepared statement he would deliver to the board, the legal briefs outlining the implications of his marriage. He picked up his phone and sent a text to Maya. "Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., Sterling Global Boardroom. I'm telling them everything. You can watch the live stream on the company website if you want. I'm keeping my promise." Her response came quickly. "I'll be watching." Alexander smiled despite the throbbing in his cheek, despite the war he knew was coming, despite everything. He was finally doing the right thing, and it felt like freedom. The morning arrived too quickly. Alexander dressed carefully in his best suit, a charcoal gray that reminded him of the one he had worn the night he walked into Maya's restaurant. He looked at himself in the mirror and tried to see what Maya saw. Not a CEO, not a Sterling, just a man trying to be brave enough to choose love. The boardroom filled with executives at 8:45, all of them looking curious and wary. Victoria was already seated at the far end of the table, her face a mask of aristocratic indifference. Cameron slipped in at the last minute and gave Alexander an encouraging nod. Genevieve Adler, the family lawyer, sat beside Victoria, her expression professionally neutral. At exactly 9 a.m., Alexander stood at the head of the table and looked at the assembled board members. These were people who had known him his entire life, who had watched him grow from a boy attending meetings with his father to the CEO who had doubled their investments. They trusted him with their money and their loyalty. He was about to test both. "Thank you all for coming on short notice," Alexander began, his voice steady. "I've called this meeting to address a personal matter that has become public and may have implications for the company. I want to ensure that you hear the truth from me directly rather than from speculation or media reports." He saw Victoria's jaw tighten, saw Genevieve lean forward, saw Cameron sit back with his arms crossed, waiting. 6 months ago, Alexander continued, I married a woman named Maya Chun. The marriage took place in Singapore during a business trip. It was impulsive, perhaps, but it was also legal, legitimate, and entered into with genuine feeling. Maya is a remarkable woman, intelligent, kind, and strong in ways that have nothing to do with money or social position. He paused, letting the words sink in. He could see the shock on several faces, the calculating looks on others, the furious rage building in his mother's eyes. I have not handled this situation well, Alexander admitted. When I returned and faced family and corporate pressures, I made the decision to keep the marriage private. That was a mistake. It was unfair to Maya, and it was dishonest. The past week has forced me to confront that mistake publicly, and I'm here today to acknowledge the truth. I am married to Maya Chun. She is my wife, and I intend to honor that commitment regardless of the personal or professional consequences. The room erupted. Board members started talking over each other, some demanding explanations, others asking about legal implications. Victoria remained silent, her face a mask of fury. Through it all, Alexander remained standing, waiting for the chaos to subside. Finally, Victoria stood and the room fell silent. "This is precisely the kind of reckless behavior I warned you about," she said, addressing the board rather than Alexander. "My son has allowed personal feelings to cloud his judgment. He is married inappropriately, handled the situation dishonestly, and is now attempting to legitimize this farce by appealing to your sympathy. I move that we vote to remove him as CEO effective immediately and appoint an interim leader until this matter is resolved." Several board members nodded. Alexander had expected this. "Before you vote," he said, his voice cutting through the murmurs, "I want you to understand what this is really about. This isn't about whether I made a good marriage choice. This is about whether the CEO of this company has the right to a private life, to make personal decisions without the board's approval. If you vote to remove me because I married someone my mother disapproves of, you set a precedent that personal autonomy is subject to corporate oversight." He looked around the table, meeting each board member's eyes. "I've led this company for 2 years. In that time, we've doubled our market value, expanded into 6 new markets, and increase shareholder returns by 38%. I've done this while dealing with my father's death, my mother's interference, and a hostile takeover attempt from my own family. My personal life has never affected my professional performance. Removing me now sends a message that good leadership matters less than family politics." Cameron stood up unexpectedly. "I'd like to say something," he said, and everyone turned to look at him. Cameron Sterling rarely spoke in board meetings, preferring to remain the charming, useless younger son. "I've watched my brother kill himself trying to meet impossible standards his entire life," Cameron said. "He's been the perfect son, the perfect executive, the perfect Sterling heir. And you know what? It's made him miserable. For the first time in his life, he's choosing something for himself, choosing someone who makes him happy. If you remove him for that, you deserve the kind of leader you'll get, someone who cares more about appearances than results." The words were simple but effective. Several board members who had been nodding along with Victoria now looked uncertain. Alexander felt a surge of gratitude for his brother, for Cameron's unexpected support. Victoria stood again, her voice cold with finality. "Call the vote," she demanded. The vote was close. 10-8. Alexander survived as CEO by 2 votes, and those 2 votes were delivered by board members who had worked with his father and grandfather who valued results over scandal. Victoria left the boardroom without a word, Genevieve trailing behind her. The message was clear. This was not over. After the board dispersed, Cameron approached Alexander and clapped him on the shoulder. "That was either the bravest or stupidest thing you've ever done," he said. "I'm still deciding which." "Me too," Alexander admitted, "but I kept my promise." He pulled out his phone and saw a message from Maya waiting. "I watched. You were brave. Thank you for choosing truth." Alexander smiled, his chest tight with emotion. He had won the first battle, but the war was far from over. His mother would regroup, would find new ways to attack, would make good on her threats. But for the first time in his life, Alexander was fighting for something that mattered more than corporate politics or family legacy. He was fighting for love, and that made all the difference. The media descended like locusts. Within an hour of Alexander's board meeting, every major news outlet was running the story. Sterling CEO confirms secret marriage to waitress dominated headlines, accompanied by photos of Maya from the restaurant video and stock images of Alexander in his suit. The narrative was irresistible. Billionaire CEO and working-class waitress. Secret marriage and public scandal. Family drama and corporate intrigue. It had everything the 24-hour news cycle craved. Maya watched it unfold from her apartment, her phone buzzing constantly with calls from reporters, requests for interviews, and messages from people she had not spoken to in years suddenly wanting to reconnect. Dr. Novak had advised her to say nothing, to let Alexander's statement stand on its own, to resist the temptation to defend herself or explain. "Let them speculate," the lawyer had said. "Every word you say will be twisted. Silence is power right now." But silence felt like cowardice. Maya watched talking heads on television debate whether she was a victim or a schemer, whether Alexander was noble or foolish, whether their marriage was real love or a publicity stunt. Everyone had an opinion about her life, about her choices, about her worth, and she was expected to sit quietly and accept it. Her mother called mid-morning, her voice tight with worry. "The reporters are camped outside your aunt's building," Lily said. "They're asking neighbors about our family, about your childhood." "Maya, this is getting dangerous. Maybe you should consider taking that money and ending this." "Mom." Alexander just stood in front of his entire board and acknowledged our marriage, Maya said. "He chose me over his mother, over his position, over everything. I can't walk away now, but what kind of life is this?" Lily asked. "Cameras following you, strangers judging you, living in a fishbowl. Is this what you want?" Maya thought about the question. Was this what she wanted? To be scrutinized and dissected, to have her privacy stripped away, to become a character in a story that everyone felt entitled to narrate? No, but she also did not want to be erased, to be denied, to be treated like a secret shame. "I want Alexander," Maya said quietly, "and this is the price of having him. I just hope I'm strong enough to pay it." There was a knock on her apartment door, firm and authoritative. Maya looked through the peephole and saw 2 men in suits. Clearly security. "Miss Chun," one of them called through the door. "We're from Sterling Global's security team. Mr. Sterling sent us to ensure your safety and escort you somewhere private if you'd like to leave your apartment. Maya opened the door cautiously. The men showed her credentials, professional and polite. There are approximately 20 reporters outside your building, the taller one explained. Mr. Ling was concerned for your safety and comfort. We have a car waiting in the back alley if you'd like to avoid them. It was surreal. Yesterday she had been a waitress catching the bus home. Today she had personal security and reporters camping outside her building. This was Alexander's world and she was being pulled into it whether she was ready or not. Where would you take me? Maya asked. Mr. Sterling has arranged a suite at the Riverside Hotel under an assumed name, the security guard said. Completely private. He thought you might appreciate some space away from the media circus. Maya hesitated. Accepting Alexander's help felt like admitting she could not handle this alone, like surrendering her independence. But she also was not naive enough to think she could face this media storm without support. Give me 10 minutes to pack a bag, she said. The escape from her building was like something from a spy movie. The security team led her through the basement, out a service entrance, and into a waiting SUV with tinted windows. As they pulled away, Maya saw the reporters still clustered at the front entrance, waiting for her to emerge. She felt like a fugitive, and the irony was not lost on her. She had spent her whole life invisible, and now she would give anything to disappear again. The Riverside Hotel was exactly the kind of place Maya had only seen in movies. The suite was larger than her entire apartment, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the river, a bedroom with a bed that could sleep 4 people, and a bathroom with a tub deep enough to drown in. There were fresh flowers on every surface and a basket of expensive snacks with a note in Alexander's handwriting. I'm sorry for the chaos. You deserve better than this. I'll come by this evening if you're willing to see me. Maya sat on the enormous bed and felt the full weight of her new reality settle over her. This was her life now. Hotels and security guards, media scrutiny and public judgment. This was what it meant to be married to Alexander Sterling. And the terrifying thing was, she was not sure she wanted it. Her phone rang. Alexander, she answered. Are you okay? He asked immediately, his voice tight with concern. The security team said they got you out safely, but I've been worried. The media is brutal and I know this isn't what you signed up for. What did I sign up for, Alexander? Maya asked. When we got married in Singapore, what exactly did I agree to? Because I don't remember anyone mentioning reporters or security teams or having my entire life dissected on television. Alexander was quiet for a moment. You're right, he said. You agreed to marry me not to become a public spectacle. I'm sorry, Maya, I'm trying to protect, but I'm probably making it worse. I don't need protection, Maya said, hearing the echo of what Alexander had told her in the park. I need honesty. I need to know if this is sustainable. Can we actually have a life together? Or is this just going to be an endless war with your family and the media? I don't know, Alexander admitted. Hell, I'd never done this before. I'd never chosen someone over the family, never let anyone see the messy parts of my life. I'm figuring this out as I go. That's not good enough, Maya said, feeling something inside her shift. I need you to be sure, Alexander. I need you to be certain that this is what you want because I can't keep being the collateral damage of your uncertainty. I am sure, Alexander said urgently. I'm sure about you, about us. Everything else, the media, my mother, the company drama, that's just noise. But you and me, that's real. That's the only thing I'm certain about. Then prove it, Maya said, echoing her own words from the park. Come here. Not this evening, not when it's convenient. Come now. Choose me right now, in the middle of the workday, in the middle of the chaos. Show me that I'm not just something you fit into your schedule between board. She heard him take a sharp breath. I'm on my way, he said. Give me 20 minutes. He hung up and Maya sat in the luxurious silence of the hotel suite, wondering if she had just issued an ultimatum or a test. Perhaps it was both. She was tired of being understanding, tired of making excuses for him, tired of being the one who bent and accommodated while he tried to balance her against everything else in his life. If they were going to make this work, he needed to choose her not just in grand gestures, but in the small moments, the inconvenient moments, the moments when choosing her cost him something. Alexander arrived in 15 minutes, not 20. He must have broken traffic laws getting there. He looked disheveled for the first time since she had known him. His tie loosened, his hair slightly messed, his eyes wild with something that looked like fear. I'm here, he said, standing in the doorway of the suite. I left a meeting with investors. I ignored 3 calls from Genevieve, and I'm pretty sure I gave my assistant a heart attack. I'm here because you asked me to be. And nothing else matters more than that. Maya looked at him, this man who had broken her heart and was now trying to piece it back together. Your mother called me, she said, deciding to test his resolve further. An hour ago. From a blocked number, but I knew it was her. Alexander's face went pale. What did she say? She told me that I was ruining your life, Maya said. That every day I stay in it, I'm dragging you away from your responsibilities, destroying your reputation, making you weak. She said that if I really loved you, I would let you go. That I would take the money and disappear and let you live the life you were meant to live. That's... Alexander started, but Maya held up her hand. She also said that you would eventually resent me, Maya continued, her voice steady, though her heart was racing. That right now you think you're in love, but eventually you'll wake up and realize what you gave up for me. Your mother's respect. Your family legacy, your standing in the business. She said that one day you'll look at me and see not the woman you love, but the woman who cost you everything. The words hung in the air, poisonous and compelling. Alexander crossed the room and knelt in front of where Maya sat on the bed, taking her hands in his. "Listen to me," he said, his voice intense. "My mother has spent her entire life believing that love is a weakness and that family legacy is the only thing that matters. She's wrong. She's been wrong her whole life, and it's made her miserable and made my father miserable and nearly made me miserable too." He squeezed her hands. "You didn't cost me anything, Maya. You gave me something. You gave me the courage to see that the life I was living was a prison of other people's expectations. Yes, I might lose my position as CEO. Yes, my mother might never forgive me. Yes, my reputation in certain circles might be damaged, but I don't care. I genuinely don't care, because without you, none of it meant anything anyway. How do I know you won't change your mind?" Maya asked, tears pricking her eyes. "How do I know that a year from now, 5 years from now, you won't wake up and realize your mother was right?" "You don't," Alexander said simply. "That's what faith is. That's what marriage is. It's choosing to believe in something you can't prove. I'm asking you to have faith in me, in us, even though I've done nothing to earn it. I'm asking you to take a leap with me and trust that we'll figure out how to fly on the way down." Maya looked into his eyes and saw something she had not seen before. Absolute certainty, not about the future or the outcome, but about his choice. He had chosen her, fully and completely, and everything else was just details to be worked out. "I'm scared," Maya admitted. "I'm scared of your mother and the media and this world I don't understand. I'm scared that I'm not strong enough for this." "You're the strongest person I know," Alexander said. "You survived 6 months thinking I had abandoned you. You stood up in a room full of people and told the truth when it would have been easier to stay silent. You refused $2 million because your dignity mattered more than money. Maya, if you're not strong enough for this, nobody is." He reached into his pocket and pulled out the ring box, the one he had given her in the park, the one she'd carried but not worn. "Marry me again," he said. "Not in secret this time, not in a moment of rebellion. Marry me properly, publicly, with all our friends and family watching. Let me show the world that you're not my secret or my shame. You're my choice, my partner, my wife." Maya took the box from him and opened. The diamond caught the light from the windows, throwing small rainbows across the white bedspread. It was beautiful and terrifying, this symbol of a life she had never imagined living. "If I say yes," Maya said slowly, "if I agree to be your wife publicly in front of your world, I need something from you." "Anything," Alexander said. "I need you to accept that I'm not going to change, Maya. I'm not going to become someone different to fit into your world. I'll always be the daughter of an immigrant, the girl who worked 3 jobs to pay bills, the waitress who took the bus. I won't apologize for that, and I won't pretend to be something I'm not. I don't want you to change," Alexander said. "I fell in love with exactly who you are. The woman who tells the truth even when it's hard, who fights for what's right, who sees people instead of positions. That's who I want beside me. That's who I need beside me." Maya looked at him, kneeling before her with hope and fear and love written plainly on his face. She thought about her mother's warning, about Victoria's threats, about the media circus waiting outside. She thought about everything that could go wrong, all the ways this could end in heartbreak. And then she thought about that night in Singapore, about the man who had held her hand and told her she made him feel human. That man was here now, fighting his way back to her through all the walls he had built. "Yes," Maya said. "I'll marry you again, properly this time." Alexander's face transformed with joy. He took the ring from the box and slipped it onto her finger. And this time Maya let it stay there, let it mark her as his. Let it announce to the world that she belonged to someone and someone belonged to her. They sat together on the enormous hotel bed, holding each other while the city moved on outside their windows. There would be more battles ahead. Victoria would not surrender easily. The media would continue to dissect their relationship. There would be difficult days and moments of doubt. But for now, in this moment, they had each other and the fragile, resilient hope that love could be enough if you were brave enough to fight for it. Maya's phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Novak. "I saw Alexander enter your hotel. Whatever happens next, remember you have rights and protection under law, but also, congratulations. Sometimes the brave choice is also the right." Maya smiled and showed Alexander the message. "Your lawyer thinks we're crazy," she said. "Most people probably do," Alexander agreed. "Are they wrong?" Maya asked. Alexander kissed her forehead, gentle and reverent. "Probably not. But I'd rather be crazy with you than sane without you." Outside the hotel, reporters continued their vigil, waiting for the next development in the story. Victoria Sterling was likely plotting her next move, preparing new strategies to separate her son from the woman she saw as a threat. The Sterling Global Board was probably in emergency sessions discussing the implications for the company. But inside the suite, Alexander and Maya simply held each other. Two people who had found each other across impossible distances and were determined not to let go. The war was not over, but they would fight it together. 3 months later, Maya stood in front of a floor-length mirror in a private suite at the city's oldest church, adjusting the simple silk wedding dress that somehow felt both too elegant and exactly right. It was nothing like what she had imagined wearing when she had dreamed of her wedding as a girl. It was better because it was real, because it was honest, because the man waiting for her at the altar had fought his way back to her through walls of money and pride and fear. Her mother mother sat in a chair nearby, looking healthier than she had in months. The stress of the media attention had initially worsened Lily's condition, but Alexander had quietly arranged for the best cardiac specialists in the country to take over her care. When Maya had protested, insisting she did not want his money to solve her problems, Alexander had simply said that her problems were his problems now, and he was going to use every resource available to help the woman who had raised the person he loved most in the world. It was hard to argue with that. "You look beautiful, my darling," Lily said, her eyes bright with tears. "Like a princess, but still like my Maya." "I'm nervous," Maya admitted. "The first wedding was just us and an officiant in the hotel room. This one has 200 guests and cameras in all of Alexander's world watching to see if I'll embarrass him." "You could never embarrass him," Lily said firmly. "You are his equal in every way that matters. Anyone who doesn't see that isn't worth your concern." A knock on the door revealed Cameron Sterling, looking remarkably sober and serious in his role as Alexander's best man. "It's time," he said, then added with a grin, "My brother's about to have a nervous breakdown out there. He keeps asking if you've changed your mind." "Tell him I'm exactly where I want to be," Maya said. The walk down the aisle felt like moving through a dream. The church was filled with people from both their worlds, board members and business associates sitting beside Maya's former co-workers from the restaurant, her mother's friends from the immigrant community mixed with society matrons in designer hats, Dr. Novak in the third row beside Genevieve Adler in an unlikely friendship born from mutual respect, and at the end of the aisle stood Alexander, looking at her like she was the only person in the world. His eyes were bright with emotion, and Maya saw him mouth 2 words as she approached. "You came," as if she would be anywhere else, as if there was any choice but this. The ceremony was simple and heartfelt. They had written their own vows, and when it was Alexander's turn to speak, his voice was steady but thick with emotion. "Maya, 6 months ago I made you promises in a hotel room in Singapore. I told you I would stand by your side, that I would choose you over everything else. And then I broke those promises because I was afraid. I'm here today to make those promises again, and this time I will keep them. I promise to choose you every day, even when it's hard. I promise to see you, really see you, and never let you become invisible again. I promise to be worthy of your courage, your strength, your extraordinary heart. I am so grateful that you gave me a second chance, and I will spend the rest of my life earning it." Maya's hand shook as she delivered her own vows. "Alexander, you taught me that being seen can be terrifying and beautiful at the same time. You taught me that love requires courage, that truth requires sacrifice, and that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is admit you were wrong and try again. I promise to never let you hide from yourself, to always speak the truth even when it's uncomfortable, to be your partner in every sense of the word. We're both still learning how to do this, but we'll learn together." When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, the church erupted in applause. Alexander kissed her, and Maya felt the weight of the past 6 months finally lift from her shoulders. They were married properly and publicly, and no one could erase that. The reception was held at a hotel ballroom that had been transformed into something elegant but warm, with hundreds of candles and white flowers. Maya had insisted on keeping it relatively simple, rejecting Victoria's suggestion of a 1,000-person gala at the country club. This was their day, not a society event. Victoria herself had not attended the wedding. She had sent a cold, formal note declining the invitation and wishing them well in a tone that clearly meant the opposite. Her absence was noted by everyone and commented on by no one in Maya's presence. But Maya saw the way Alexander's jaw tightened when people asked about his mother, saw the flash of old pain in his eyes. She took his hand and squeezed it, a silent reminder that he was not alone in this choice. During the reception, Cameron delivered a best man speech that started inappropriate and ended surprisingly touching. "My brother has always done everything right," he said. "Perfect grades, perfect job, perfect life. It was exhausting to watch. But then he did something completely insane. He fell in love with someone real, someone who didn't care about his money or his name, someone who saw him instead of the Sterling Empire. And you know what? It made him human. It made him happy. So here's to Maya for teaching my brother that perfection is overrated and love is worth fighting for. And here's to Alexander for finally doing something interesting." The crowd laughed and raised their glasses, and Maya saw Alexander wipe his eyes, moved by his brother's word. Later, as they danced their first dance to a song that reminded them both of Singapore, Alexander whispered in her ear, "Are you happy?" "Yes," Maya said, and realized it was true. "Are you?" "I'm terrified and exhausted and fighting battles on multiple fronts," Alexander said. "My mother has convinced 3 board members to resign in protest. There's a shareholder lawsuit claiming I'm distracted and unfit for leadership, and the company's stock is still volatile. But yes, Maya, I'm happy. For the first time in my life, I'm doing what I want rather than what I'm supposed to do. And even with all the chaos, it feels right. What happens if you lose the company?" Maya asked, voicing the fear she had been carrying. "What happens if your mother wins and you're forced out? Then I start something new," Alexander said simply. "I'm a good businessman, Maya. I don't need the Sterling name to be successful. It might be liberating, actually, to build something that's mine rather than inherit something that comes with ghosts and expectations." "You'd really walk away from it?" Maya asked, surprised. "If it came to that, yes," Alexander said. "The company was never what I wanted. It was just what I was supposed to want. You're what I want. Everything else is negotiable." As the night wore on, Maya found herself talking to people she never imagined meeting. a tech billionaire who told her about his own working-class background and how he had never forgotten where he came from, a famous actress who had married into old money and sympathized with the challenges of navigating a world with unwritten rules and judgment at every turn, a Supreme Court justice who told Maya that her story reminded her why she had become a lawyer in the first place, to fight for people who refused to be erased. Near the end of the evening, Maya stepped outside onto a terrace for a moment of quiet. The city spread before her, glittering and vast. Somewhere out there was her old apartment, the restaurant where she had served coffee to people who never looked at her face, the bus stops and small spaces of her previous life. That life felt both distant and precious, a foundation she would never deny or forget. She heard footsteps behind her and turned to find Lily approaching, moving slowly but steadily. "Are you escaping your own wedding reception?" her mother asked with a smile. "Just taking a breath," Maya said. "It's a lot." "Yes," Lily agreed, "but you're handling it beautifully. I'm so proud of you, Maya. Not because you married a wealthy man, but because you refused to compromise who you are. You stood up for yourself, you demanded truth, and you never let anyone make you feel small. That's the real victory here." Maya hugged her mother carefully, mindful of her fragility. "I was so scared," she admitted. "I'm still scared sometimes. What if I can't do this? What if I don't belong in this world?" "You belong wherever you choose to be," Lily said, "and Alexander is lucky to have you. Any world that doesn't recognize your worth isn't worth belonging to anyway." Alexander found them there a few minutes later, and Maya saw the way his face softened when he looked at Lily. He had spent the past 3 months building a relationship with her mother, visiting the hospital, asking about her life and her stories, treating her with the respect and affection of a real son. It was one of the things that had convinced Maya to trust him again, the way he honored the woman who had raised her. "Mrs. Chun," Alexander said, "may I steal my wife for one last dance?" "She's your wife now," Lily said with a smile. "You don't need to ask my permission anymore. But treat her well, or you'll answer to me." "Yes, ma'am," Alexander said seriously. "I will. I promise." They danced one final time as the reception wound down and Maya laid her head on Alexander's shoulder, feeling the steady beat of his heart against her cheek. "No regrets?" Alexander asked softly. "Not even one," Maya said. "You?" "Only that I didn't fight for us sooner," Alexander admitted. "That I wasted 6 months we could have spent together. We weren't ready 6 months ago," Maya said. "You needed to learn how to choose me. I needed to learn how to demand being chosen. We both needed to become people who could sustain this kind of love." "When did you get so wise?" Alexander asked. "I've always been wise," Maya said with a smile. "You just weren't paying attention." They left the reception in a shower of rose petals, climbing into a car that would take them to the airport and a honeymoon in a place where no one knew their names or their story. For 2 weeks, they would be just a couple in love, exploring a new city, learning each other's rhythms, building the foundation of their shared life. The media would still be there when they returned. Victoria would still be waging her campaign to drive them apart. There would still be board meetings and legal battles and moments of doubt, but they would face it together, two people who had chosen each other against all logic and odds, who had proven that love could survive even when the whole world seemed determined to kill it. As the plane lifted off, Maya looked at the ring on her finger, the symbol of promises made and kept, of a love that had been tested and had emerged stronger. She thought about the shy waitress she had been, invisible and unnoticed, serving coffee to people who never saw her face. That woman was gone, transformed not by money or status, but by the simple revolutionary act of refusing to be erased. She had fought for her truth, for her dignity, for her right to exist and be acknowledged, and she had won. Not because Alexander had chosen her, though that mattered, but because she had chosen herself first, had decided that her worth was not negotiable, that her existence was not subject to someone else's approval. That was the real victory. The rest was just love, beautiful and imperfect and real, the kind of love that required daily choosing and constant courage, the kind of love that was worth fighting for. Maya Chun Sterling leaned her head against her husband's shoulder and smiled. She had been invisible for so long. Now she was radiant with the light of being truly seen, and she would never let herself disappear again. The story of the shy waitress who refused a billionaire money and demanded acknowledgement instead had captured the public's imagination because it spoke to something universal. Everyone wanted to be seen, to be valued, to matter. Maya's courage in standing up for herself had inspired thousands of others to do the same, to refuse to be erased, to demand their own truth. In the end, this was never just a story about a secret marriage or a corporate dynasty. It was a story about dignity, about the revolutionary act of insisting on your own worth in a world that constantly tells you to settle for less. And sometimes if you're brave enough and stubborn enough and honest enough, you get to keep both your dignity and your love. That's not a fairy tale. That's just the truth.